Hey, we're back. It's Johnny Beane. It's 10:01 p.m., June 30th, 2018, Saturday night. I'm here with Steve Anderson.
Present.
There he is.
No more applause. We're done with that.
Jay Hannon. He's on to his second
sip.
Yeah. And David Allen Wright. Wow. Last time I saw you was like 20 minutes ago.
Yes. Before that was 2 years.
So getting better.
Yeah, it's getting better, man.
Yeah, yeah. So those of you in the chat, please let us know if the video looks okay. For some reason there was a glitch earlier, and hopefully everything's all good.
It's better.
And if not,
I'm peeping it right now. It's better.
Awesome, awesome, man. So David Allen, what's the latest, man? Where were you today? Hi.
Hey, how are you? Man, this has been a fun night tonight, So I'm not at home, I will tell you that. I'm actually at Make Nashville. I'm over at the Makerspace in Nashville we have. But I was at the NAMM show since Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and actually it ended at 4 o'clock today. So I'll tell you, it was really cool. Had a lot of great stuff. I got to meet a lot of interesting people. I saw some new people this year that I haven't seen in the last year or so. And a few companies did not come back this year. I'm really surprised. I didn't see Ibanez there tonight or today. I didn't see ESP.
Wow.
They were always there. I don't know all the details. PV booth was a lot littler this year because, they come out with a HP2 last year and they had all of them sold in 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yes. Last year it was incredible. This year I was asking them about some of the units, and then and I'll give you a tremolo update here in a second on the PV. So I asked the people at PV, I said, hey guys, can I buy one of these units or one of the guitars, that they had there? And he's like, well, we're using those and we're bringing them back to Meridian for, they didn't want to sell them at the show. A lot of times you can buy stuff at shows every year, I'll buy different things at different ones. I always go buy a whole bunch of stuff at all the shows and, all the different things over the years, So, so let me tell you this on the PV, I talked to him last year and when I was working downtown at another company, and I was able to run over there Thursday afternoon, the first day. And I talked to him about the PV HP2. And if I send you a trans tremolo, will you put it on for me? And the first thing they said, they kind of looked at me, baffled at me and looked at me like it was kind of like bananas or something. It's like, hey, and then I said, I've got a brand new one in the box, brand new. It's never been ever installed. It's a NOS unit, new old stock, come from Australia, that I got like a couple of years ago, and everything's there, all the parts and everything. I said, hey, if I send you the trans tremolo, can you do it? And they're like, well, here's the email. Contact us. 2 weeks later, I contact them, send them all the pictures, and then they never returned the email. You know how it is, and it's like they probably forgot about me. So I went to the same guy today.
Remember me?
Sorry. No, it was yesterday. I'm sorry, I was there yesterday. Yeah, so I went up to him because I've been dealing with a lot of. When I go to the NAMM show, it's like a business meetings, man. You got to understand. I go in and I'm having to meet all these different people. It's like I don't even have a chance to play the guitar as much. But I did go over to the booth, and I'll talk about the Fender booth here in a minute. But so I went over there yesterday afternoon and went over and said, hey guys, I had his business card. I actually brought his business card back up and said, hey, I talked to you 1 year ago. And he looked at me. It's like, oh, Lord, because he thought, what happened? So the funny part is like he you know how it is. You beat 1,000 people in a business meetings and industrial conferences and stuff like that, trade shows over the years. And so he looked at me. I said, well, here's your card and everything. I kind of want to touch bases with you because it's been 1 year and I'm kind of waiting 1 year later. And he laughed and everything. I said, look, this is what I'm trying to do. And he's like, I'll tell you what, man. He says, I said, now I've done all the CAD design. I've got all the Fusion 360 stuff done. I've got everything CADed for it. So I can send you the CAD files. So your engineering department does not have to do all the work that they have to do. And he looked at me. It's like, how did you do it? I was like, well, it's simple. I had a Wolfgang. They don't want to call it a Wolfgang anymore. I said, I have a PV previous version 18 years ago, and I CADed the body and use the body. And he's like, you actually catted the body? I said, yeah, I catted the whole body and the neck and everything. And, you know, and it's like, I'll send you the file, but you have a better CAD file than I do. You know, that's like,
Yeah.
I said, can you share me your CAD file, your production CAD file? And he's like, nope, you know, until you sign legal paperwork that I will not share it with you. And that's like, okay, so where do I sign the legal paperwork? You know, I told him that today. So that was, I'm sorry, yesterday. So what happened? What I did last night was I actually emailed him my CAD file last night, and I talked to him today, and he was floored. So let me just say that
You showed him
He's
yours
like-
before he showed you his. Sorry, go ahead. Never mind.
I think it's frozen. Oh, there he
he
is.
says, you got.
Oh no, we're missing the good stuff. No, no.
Hang on.
Most of this stuff is
Wait.
the legal precedent for these. Okay, sorry.
We're
I'm
missing
back.
all of that.
What's that sound? Did
That
you
was
hear
me.
that?
Hang on.
No.
David? Oh,
Show's over, everybody. Good night.
I was gonna say, is this when he was wearing the suit?
Yeah.
You know, like he shows up in the suit, and the guy's like, "Oh no, it's you. You're back."
Yeah.
Seemed like they were trying. It sounded like they were trying to ditch him, and then he shows up, and he's like, "Remember me?"
Yeah.
Just like this.
Standing there tapping his foot, looking at him. You remember me?
Can you hear me?
Hey, yes.
All right, hear me? I don't know what happened. I'm in there talking to myself again. So talking. I'm on a wireless, and I should use an Ethernet cable. Sorry, I probably need to find an Ethernet cable in this place and see if it'll work better. If it doesn't, if it does it again, I'll put an Ethernet cable in and see if I can use a Cat6 cable, see if I can get a better transmission rates. All right, so where were we at? Sorry, we'll go back.
You
CAD,
send
CAD
him.
designs.
You sent him your CAD design, and then he looked at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he liked it, and so I went and saw him today. You know how it is. You know these NAMM meetings. You know, you go. I went Thursday afternoon, and then I had to come back Friday afternoon because I had to work every day. And then today I had all day, so I got in around 11:45 or 12 today, and you know I have to do a lot of correspondence with different people physically at the NAMM show. So I got to talk to him, and he's like, "Man, I reviewed your CAD file, and the engineering department liked it." And I was like, "Okay, cool, that's great. Now I need to. How we're going to do this?" He said, "Well, what I got to do is I've got to talk to make sure that we can do this in production. We got to pull a body." So this is what he told me. He says, if I send you a body," and I told him, I said, "I'm getting a CAD machine in about a month." And he's like, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just send you the body, and you do the CAD work yourself. So I'll do the tremolo on my machine when I get it." So that's one thing I'll be doing probably in August. So they didn't want to touch it, is what I'm saying. It's all custom work, and they don't even want to. But what I will do is, my plan is I'm going to do the body, and I'll send the body back to them and let them paint it and everything, you know, and then put their marks on it and stuff, and then assemble the neck and everything, and then send it back to me, and I can fine tune it later, because I can do it. I've got all the I got spectrum analyzers and oscilloscopes and stuff like that, and I've got the auto tuners from Peterson. I use like this Peterson auto stretch tuners, and type in humidity. You know how those things work. Type in humidity and temperatures and all that stuff, and it can actually do an auto stretch for you.
Oh no.
What was the magic word? Stretch?
I've got cool. Yeah.
Hey, there you are.
Yeah. Can you hear it? Cool. I'm trying not to move. Not going to move the mouse anymore. Sorry.
It's
I think
hogging
I'm moving the mouse on the computer.
all the RAM.
Is the mouse wireless?
Yes.
Oh,
No, it's actually an L
that's it.
mouse. It's an L mouse on the machine. So, but if I have to, I can run an Ethernet cable over to the machine if I need to. See if the LAN will be faster. All right. So, what I'm doing is I'm getting a CNC machine in about a month from now, and I'll set it all up. And then I'm not going to be doing bodies. Well, if I do a body, it's for me. I'm not doing bodies because, you know, we have a great friend we always have a great friend that does this stuff, and I'm not even going to touch any of the stuff that he's doing because I just don't have time, number one. And plus, he's so much of an expert. I just let him do all that work because I give him all my business already. So I'm not going to do any competing.
Freeze frame
With that anyway.
Uh-huh. Maybe it's the time difference.
Yeah,
Because he said he was there yesterday, but I think to me that's still today.
So what I
he's got to get a cable.
Two cables. We had 2 cables hooked up.
Yeah,
At least it's not my fault this time.
yeah. Well, he'll wire up, and then something will happen on mine or Steve's end.
No.
Michael Smith. Hey, Michael.
Yeah.
Dude.
Did
You guys didn't. Michael sent me a picture earlier.
ooh,
Uh-oh.
I'm not going to show you guys.
Oh,
not safe for work.
not safe.
Well, no, it is. It is. It is. Oh, he's back. Oh, he went to get a cable,
All right.
Yeah.
I think.
He needs one for
let
his
me see
computer.
Ethernet cable. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah, see? And then one for the mouse.
Well, you know what's it's not so weird doing these things now when you have technical issues. Back in the day, you know, when David Allen, when we first started doing these things, if we had a technical issue, everybody just freaks out, and you're like, oh no, what's going on? You know,
Yeah, like,
these
whatever.
days we're so used to doing, you know, this stuff. It's really not a big deal.
Well, you've been doing it for how long now? Was this 3 years you've been doing this? The live
15,
streaming?
16, 17, 18. Well, you mean like this kind of thing? 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's not as weird.
No.
You know, plus it's more content. So
Yeah. So Johnny, did you see any photos from other booths at NAMM that you liked? Like the Fender regular Strat booth, or I guess you saw some of the PV stuff, the PV HB 2s?
that stuff was there.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, it was David Allen that actually he posted all these pictures.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, of all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, was there any new like EVH amps? Anything new that they released?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. The biggest. Well, we can let David tell you, but no, the biggest thing was the one thing you guys know of.
The 78. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think they wanted to do anything to overshadow,
Yeah.
you know. And plus, I think if a new amp or something comes out, I mean, most of the time, you know, the big stuff comes out at Winter NAMM.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Although it looks like, and David Allen, you can correct me. It looks like nobody got to play those guitars, the 78s. Or you can't hear me. You can hear me. They had them roped off. I don't think anybody.
Yeah,
Chip didn't even touch them, right?
Right.
Because I watched the video when Chip was talking about him. He's pointing to him. He didn't even like grab one and be like, look at the detail on the tremolo or something. He didn't go any, you know. So if he ain't, you ain't
the 78s, nobody played them, right?
No, you can't touch them. Not allowed to. They're roped off.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I can put an Ethernet cable in. Hang on one second to make it faster.
Because those are probably ones that are for sale that people are getting. A part of the whatever. So one of those that is the super one, you know, the one that one of those that Eddie actually played.
Yeah,
then,
the
right?
top one.
Mm-hmm.
The top one is the 25K one, and then so the top one was the 25, and then the second one was the was it 12.99, and then the very bottom was the 78. So did they go into details about the information?
Huh? Did they? Yeah.
Yeah, somebody go into it yet? I mean, I didn't. I mean, I heard the story Friday or Thursday. So I didn't know if anybody's went into the details of how each one's made, from painting and stuff.
They did a couple videos with Chip today. They did one on Instagram. Like early in the morning, there was an Instagram one, and then they did another one. EVH Gear did one where they talked to Chip and then to Matt Brown.
Okay.
So, and they were talking about all the case candy, and apparently a couple of them, they come with a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did they talk about the Eddie's mother photo book from 1977, 78? Did they go into that detail yet?
No.
Okay. So this is what I was told by two different people at the booth Thursday. Last year, or a little over a year ago, they found a photo book of all the pictures from 77 and 78 from Eddie's mother that took them before they went on tour. They were still doing all the clubs and they were doing the record and they were doing all the stuff back in 77, early 78.
Mm-hmm.
So they found these pictures that they didn't even know about.
Huh.
Okay. And there's like, I heard there's 200 or 280 or something like that, somewhere in that area, ballpark. So what I heard was there's a whole bunch of pictures that they never saw, and it was all the white and black guitar before he ever painted it. Okay. And there's some things that I can't go into detail yet, but there's some pictures of different things, and then they use those to use the mock-up of the build. And so also the tremolo is specially built. It had to be specially built because there's a base plate, like at the Floyd Rose here, the base plate on the Fender base plate had to be changed because it had a steel block underneath it. Modification that he did. And then there were some other things, characteristics that he changed on the guitar. It actually has all, the brass nut on it. And then, by the way, they were talking about the 3-in-1 oil cans. Start looking on eBay to find them if you can get one, man, because apparently they've spent like 6 months on eBay and all over the world searching for oil cans from 1977 and 78.
Yeah, going to like garage sales and stuff like that. They were saying yard sales and garage sales, trying to find them in people's garages.
Yeah, exactly. So you start looking around, guys. You might be finding them on eBay, and $80 for a 1977 vintage oil can.
Yeah.
So like that. So, but I'm just saying, they went into a lot of detail. Just like how they did the 5150 stickers and stuff, or the numbers. You remember a couple of years ago when they come out with the other 5150 guitar, they had to source down the stickers. Or not the stick. I'm sorry, the numbers, the space tape numbers. So
the decals.
Yeah,
the decals. Yeah.
And they told me a story at the NAMM show last year about all that. Anyway, they told me, they had to source it, and they went to they had to go back to all the source of the truck stock companies, and then they had to go back and, it was almost a 1-year ordeal for that alone. Is what they were telling me. To find original pixel tape for the numbers and stuff. So they did find it. Next will be building here's the next thing they'll probably want to build eventually is relic space tape.
Yeah.
3 times as much, but relic, So
okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah, David
Allen.
Yeah, sorry. There's a question in the chat for you, David Allen. Someone's asking, did they have a Kramer section at the Gibson booth?
Yes, 3 guitars. I took 4. There were some pictures of them, and they had a big giveaway today, and I couldn't really get in there to take a lot of good pictures because I was told. Let me go back real quick. I found out that Ned Steinberger was here over Thursday and Friday, and man, he's one of my other heroes, and I love Ned Steinberger. I met him over the years, all the NAMM shows years and years ago, and I didn't get to meet him today. I was wanting to find him, and he may have already left today, but he's one of my other long-term engineering type heroes from the musical world. Okay, so what happened was the Frank Johns from Advanced Plating, he worked at Steinberger for years and years and years. He told me, said, David, hey, go over there and check out the Spirit, because I was asking him about the if Ned was there, and he's like, "We'll go over to the Gibson. They actually have some spirit versions of the Steinbergs." And it's like, okay, so I went over, and then I saw the Pacer Vintage model, the red sparkly one, and they had one of those on display. And it's kind of strange because I don't know if you guys saw the pictures yet. I'll try to post some this afternoon. The
It's this one right here.
Yeah,
I've got a bunch of them. I'll make sure I'll put them in the Discord, and then probably Facebook as well, but a little fuzzy, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to make some good pictures, but my phone, I need to update my phone to a new phone. That's like 3 years old, you know. But you know, yeah, there it is, and it says Pacer Vintage on it. So I'm really confused about the Pacer Vintage. You know how we are. We're Kramer geeks over the stuff, you know. So you got to understand, when I flipped the guitar was facing forwards, and it looks just like my 82 black and I got two 82 Pacers. I got a purple one and a black one, and I took the black one apart so I can CAD the body. About 6 or 8 months ago, I took pictures of that a long time ago. Talked about it. It's got the same type of, you know, double humbuckers in it, and it's got three, like a two-tone knobs and a volume knob. You know, 3 on that picture. And so I looked at it and I wanted to flip it over, so I turned it over, and I thought, well, hold on a minute. The first thing I'm missing is the walnut strip up the neck. You know how all the other ones were. Right,
mm-hmm.
You know,
skunk stripe, yeah,
skunk stripe, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you know, they can get a headstock, you know, made, you know, accurately, you know, because those beak necks were really, you know, kind of easy to make after they made the first ones. You know how it is, you know. So I was like, well, why didn't you guys do this? And I was really confused over it because I was thinking that they can authentically do this, you know, which they can, but they didn't do it. I think there's a reason for it, I think there's a legal reason that why they couldn't do that. And also they didn't put the lock nut drill from the rear, you know, the snake bite versions.
Right.
And
I was about to say that. Yeah,
yes.
It's the top mount.
Exactly. And you know, I did, I'll tell you another thing I did some structural systems 2 years ago between a rear lock nut mount versus a top mount nut, you know, the different versions of it, and look at structural differences and stuff. And I was actually pulling a 3D simulation of a sonar report. I had a neck and I got it sonar report across the whole neck, and I was looking at how the truss rods from an 82 neck versus the new neck. I actually made a report over it, and it's a big, huge 18-page report. And I was looking at wood molecules versus the strings and, you know, all that stuff for the truss rods. So
Wow.
I was really shocked over the Kramer because it looked, you know, the body looked really accurate. I will say that I'm really, so far, I like the body because the contours are pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered where they CAD'd that thing. You know, I wonder if they got the, you know, Kramer has all the original CAD files. So,
oh no, he moved his computer. You see what happened?
Probably the rip. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll not move anything. I promise.
Don't touch anything.
I won't touch anything. So,
your hands up.
Yeah, just leave them like this. It's like swimming. It's like scuba diving with your hands out of the water. You know? Yeah. And treading water with your hands out.
If you grow a beard like this,
yeah.
you can be doing this, you know.
Exactly. So, long story short, I was really shocked on I'll say the body was really close, I believe. Now, until I get one in my hands and compare it to the 82 models I had, I wanted to look at it. You know, it's got the same Pacer type back body on it, you know, with the rear cavity control. I was kind of looking at that, and because that's the big giveaway first for me. And then I was looking at the contour, you know, where the body goes to the arm contour. That most bodies, you know, that you look at them, they don't do a full round contour. That's the big difference.
Yeah, you took a picture of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right
So
there.
I imagine people are like, what is he doing? Is he taking a picture of a corner of the guitar? Why? And that's why I was actually looking at the contour, and it's very hard to tell in a picture versus when you have it in front of you. And that's one thing I've been catting for the last couple of months, like different bodies and stuff, like the old Kramer bodies from 81, 82, different ones and stuff. And then I'm pulling out protractors and micrometers, and I'm actually, putting the interpretations of all the readings into Fusion 360. I use Fusion 360 a lot, or SolidWorks, and so I use that quite a bit. It's Fusion 360 is free, so if you guys ever want to start using it, and we can start sharing files with each other. I try to share files with each other, because the stuff that I'm doing, unless it's something proprietary that I'm actually working on under legal precedence, I will share a lot of stuff with you guys. And if you guys want to get that deep into the technical side,
right?
And, pretty cool. I mean, I love it. I will tell you this. I was telling some people the other day at Fender, I don't watch really much TV. When I leave work, I go home and I either CAD something, or I'm designing something, or I'm building something, So I'm always doing something. I don't really have much time to play guitar anymore, to be honest with you. It's sad because, but it's fun, and then I still enjoy everything I do, but you got to, for me, I get bored really quickly over one little project or something that, and then after you tackle something and you build something like, you build something like this after 5 years of work, and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to go insane. And, and you gotta get people to help you, because thank goodness for Jim and some other people that really helped me, because it's really time consuming. You don't understand, some things take 200 to 300 hours of engineering time, and most companies can't afford that. But when you're doing this as a hobby, you can actually spend 200 or 300 hours of your own time and design stuff. And then the coolest thing of all is when you go to these shows and stuff and you start talking to people, and you don't realize, these people may not know you, but they do know you. So this is the kicker. So I'm sitting there explaining something to somebody yesterday, and he's like, I already know you, dude. It's like, I know you from Facebook, from the stuff that's on it. It's like, well, I wasn't even friends with a person, so we'll just say that. So it's really cool. And then if we have time tonight, or we can do it tomorrow too, I'm actually at Make Nashville here. I'm actually at the location, and nobody's here. I'm like by myself, but we actually have a shop in here. We have a Bridgeport end mill, and we have CNC router tables. We have drill presses. We have all kind of different equipment. And I've been here working on weekends on different things.
You have a drill press?
Yes, I got everything. Drill presses, bandsaws, everything.
Man,
I
need a drill press, man. See this body?
Yeah.
I just need the man. I'm excited now, you guys.
Oh yeah, I got all kind of stuff. I actually have drill presses.
A package in the mail from Johnny.
Exactly.
I might have to. I need I need these enlarged.
Yeah.
I've got this. Where is it? Well, you know what goes on there. Yeah, I've got Shoutler stuff.
Yeah.
And I need it just installed.
Sure.
And then I wanted these Thornbuckers.
Okay.
Put in.
Oh, nice, man! You have a cool guitar, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
All chrome hardware.
Is that a flat top, Wolfgang?
Yeah. Okay. It's a Chinese special.
I got about 12 of those bodies in boxes at home.
Of course he does.
And I've got some stuff I haven't opened in a year. I've got a Devon Hall Frankenstrat body at home in a box still that I bought a couple months ago, whatever it was. Okay.
Do you have any Japanese Wolfgangs you want to get rid of?
I got about 8. I got about 12 of those at home. 8 or 12 of them. Man, I'll tell you. Did you guys read what I said last night about the Fukushima nuclear power plant? They put the generators in the basement. You don't put generators of a nuclear power plant in the basement. You put them on top of the mountain, behind you. Okay, but that's where they made all the Japanese models for years. You know, that's where that whole area. If you see, I watched Nova one night and they were showing a Fukuchami report, and it showed all the manufacturing area around that whole area, and that's where a lot of the guitars were made. Most of them were, and they had to abandon all that. So, and what is the uranium depletion rate? 12,000 years or something. So 12,500 years from now, we can go over and get the Wolfgang bodies and necks, you know, if they haven't right away, you know. So, but yes, Johnny,
man,
yes, give me the body and I can do it for you, man. It's no problem. That's nothing. And I'm actually catting the bodies right now, the flat top bodies and the arch top bodies, and then I'm going to do some stuff here at Make, but I've got a shop at home, but the CNC machine will go in the shop, and I got drill presses and stuff like that, and band saws and stuff. I just got a band saw, a really nice band saw from
I'm still here.
From an auction site, and then I've got to put a new band on it, and I bought it for $200. It's a $3,000 bandsaw, and what was wrong with it? It came from an auction site, and what happened with the band is the metal band got caught into the motor gear mechanism and locked it up, and they thought it was locked up, and that was what was wrong with it. So so I found it on like a government site, and because I'm always looking for deals and stuff on stuff, you know, different things and fix stuff. I used to be. Let me go back real quick. I used to be a auto mechanic years and years ago, and I got into diesel programming and stuff like that. And then the diesel programming got into networking programming at work. I started building all the servers, all this different stuff, all the different computer systems at the dealership. And next thing you know, I took all my Snap-on toolboxes, the $145,000 worth of Snap-on toolboxes home, and then started doing networking in Sun Microsystems and all your, you know, mainframes and all this stuff. And then next thing I know, I left that company and worked for a company called Snyder Electric. It used to be called Square D, Snyder Electric. And then I was doing electrical engineering for them, PLC controllers, logic controllers, designs, and stuff like that. And then after that, I got into medical systems here in Nashville. Nashville is a huge entity. It's like the Silicon Valley of healthcare systems. So we have a lot of companies here doing medical, you know, systems research, whatever, you know. So you have all these different companies that require data analytics or data systems or data deployments and all the different things. So it's really fun. But my hobby is building guitars and playing guitars and stuff, because I used to be a musician years ago too. Touring and stuff like, you know, Johnny used to do, but had, you know, I still have publishing rights and stuff from ASCAP and BMI, but you know, you lose, you know, you dream. Okay, so I'll tell you this one real quick. You dream when you're a kid, you want to be a professional musician, but when you get into the real world, you know, you realize it's like not what you thought it was. Let me just say that. So when you get into it, it's like, you know, you're the one writing all the music, all the songs. And, you know, you got bandmates in there complaining about they're not making like, you know, $500 a night or whatever. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. You know, there's more to this than just performing at a show. You know, there's a lot of marketing behind it. And
the business can get in the way. And
exactly.
Yeah, so, and then you're dealing with these music industry people that, you know, 1 minute they're your friend, and then, you know, it's not a friendly industry.
So I learned the hard way on how a record deal worked back in the day. Let me just say that one. That was the fun one. The first one was a fun one to go through. Oh, Lord. It would be better to just go and get a loan from a loan shark somewhere than it is to do entities of a record contract. The first time I ran into one of those.
Well, the benefit back then was, you know, they would promote you. That's why you basically needed a record label. They, you know, promotion and all that stuff. Nowadays, with social media, it's like, you know,
you self-promote yourself. So it depends on how much tirelessly reporting you want to do. So anybody, okay, so let me go back real quick too, not to get off topic of guitars and stuff. We'll go back to that in a second, but I'm just saying that anybody can really be if you have enough talent from an aspect of something new that nobody's done before, or something that you could sell yourself to, you can really promote yourself now in a digital market now with the social media and stuff. It's really come a long way. I mean, man, I was thinking this other day, I wished I had the real internet back in the old days, like the old Tandy computers, the Commodore 64s back in 84, 83, 84, and 85. I wished I had the internet back in those days. That would have been cool. because now you can actually see how somebody plays a song
Mhm.
on YouTube, and you don't understand the entity of the data now is completely changed compared to when I was growing up in the early 80s. You know, when you saw, okay, so I saw Van Halen in 1982, fair warning. I mean, not fair, yeah, between the fair warning tour, Diver Down, I saw them like a couple of times in the early 80s. It might have been Diver Down tour. I saw them, but see, back in those days, you had to read magazines and hear all this hearsay to hear what, you know, what the set list was, and, you know, what they're playing and how good they were and stuff like that, you know. So nowadays you can see all that information pretty much live streamed. It's really amazing in the environment we're at now in our lifetimes versus what we had to go through back in the early 80s. Because, you know, it was hard to find information back in the early 80s. You know, I was a huge Rush fan, so I had to learn everything about Rush. And I think you guys may already know this. You know, when I was playing, I had to learn 2112, the whole album. And took me a whole year to learn the album, but I learned all three instruments: guitar, bass, and drums.
Wow.
So I actually learned, you know, spent a whole year just on 2112, and after 2112, I studied all the different albums. And I'm talking about 4 to 5 hours a night studying, and then, you know, you would study theory. You know, I would put a blindfold on. I'd play like for an hour and a half playing blindfolded, and I play slide at night and stuff, because my brother and father were excellent musicians. They played like 8 instruments, and I didn't think I never had any inert talent when I was really young. So
2112, huh?
Yeah, that's it. Look at that.
Yep.
And but see, we know go back real. Oh, that's awesome. I'll go back.
My brother made in a wood shop. Does he have a year on this? No, just says Jim Hannon on it.
But you know, we all grew up in an
Can you cat that?
area.
He always said, "Man, I messed up his feet." He always said, "It's like, man, every time he sees it, he's like, I messed up the feet on that thing." But yeah, it's still awesome though.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you're young, you know, you got 2 things. Back in the day, you had 4 channels on TV, you know, in my area, and you had a library card. So I used to have to go to the library all the time on weekends and do research projects and stuff like that. I would learn all kind of different things. So one person, you know, Eddie was a huge influence when I was young, you know, because he almost influenced everybody, you know, back in the early 80s. You know, there was not many people except Randy Rhoads. Oh man, he was incredible, you know, to see him, and then Eddie, and then you had all the bands, you know, because when we were growing up in the early 80s, it was amazing because we got to see things live without it being fully recorded from an aspect of historical systems. I really wish we had some high definition stuff back in those days. It would have been neat to see all that stuff, you know. But it's really neat to reminisce on some of the stuff anyway. When you go to all the concerts and you remember all the stuff back in the 80s and stuff you saw, and then you know, you saw the tours with Sammy Hagar and stuff like that over the years. And then I went and saw the Gary Sharon tour. I really liked Gary Sharon's show because Eddie got to do a lot of stuff with a trans tremolo and a sustainer, you know, on the 98 tour. That was actually really well. I liked it, you know, but, you know, it's different. So you got to understand, you know, Van Halen was in the early peak of 78 all the way to 84, and then 84 on transition through the 90s, and then the 90s forward. But I think if you still had Van Halen, in my opinion, the original band, it would have changed dramatically. It would have had to. You got to understand, after 84, it was a different album altogether, you know. So, but I don't want to get into the controversy of that. But I'm just saying, I think about all this stuff when I'm working on different things. You know, what would have happened here? What would have happened there? But back on the topic of the guitars, the $25,000 guitar was actually, it's all hand painted and pinstripe by Chip. Okay. I think they told you that, right? Today they may have told you that one. And then the 12.5 or 12.9 machine guitar, that is actually hand painted by Chip, but they assemble it in California.
Huh.
Did they talk about that one? And then the 78 is just all in Corina, California. You know, the California location. So that's the 3 versions. And then there's some more details, but I cannot go into it. Sorry.
There should be a fourth version that's a production model that's $2,000 or something. I'm pissed about that, but you know, whatever.
Yeah. And also, you got to understand, you give me a challenge like, hey, I can build a guitar like that for so and so, like $1,500, $1,800 with my materials and my body and all that stuff. You know how we do, you know, as us builders or people will want to build it exactly like the picture. Okay. You know, so, and then everybody says, hey, you know, this line is 0.2 thousand centimeters off from the other one. So I'm going to tell you guys, it's like, I thought I was bad off in technical details over the years, but man, when I'm sitting there reading some of these posts, it's like, you know, the lines don't match. It's like, yeah, guys, but man, I don't have the patience anymore because, you know, to measure 2 1,000ths of a centimeter.
Well, imagine the pressure on Chip. You know, they're charging $25,000 for a guitar. It's got to be perfect.
Yes.
You know?
Exactly. And plus you got to keep it quiet. So here's another thing you got to understand, guys. It's like, you know, when you do, like any major company, you have to sign non-disclosure paperwork and all this stuff. And he cannot talk about this stuff. He can meet people. He can take pictures with people. He can do things, but he cannot talk about certain things because if it gets out, it could be millions of dollars of damage. You know, people, everybody has to understand that part because you got to understand that a company that's like, it's like how you work with a stock market. You cannot divulge certain information if a company is getting ready to merge with somebody or something. It's the same type of entity that way. So you have to be very careful what you say publicly in certain avenues, especially, you know, but, you know, I was incredibly happy when I saw that stuff. And it's like, it's all roped off. You could not touch any of this stuff. You couldn't even put your hands on it. So
don't even point at it. Don't even point at it.
Well, at first, when I was there Thursday, I was actually had my camera and I was actually going really, really close, much as I can to get up there. And they were kind of looking at me and laughing. Some of the people were laughing at me. And so, well, your arm's kind of long, isn't it? It's like, yeah, my arm is long, you know. So they were.
That's not my arm.
Exactly. So, the funny part was, you know, it's all, you know, roped off and, you know, and then also what happened was I went over and I saw the first picture and I saw the Wolfgang, the white and black Wolfgang, and I took a picture of that. And then I come around the corner and I saw the 78s because I was at work Thursday and I saw the announcement that they were coming out with a 78 eruption model. And I thought, well, you know, it'll be at the NAMM show and I'll see it. And then this year they moved the booth. The booth used to be right next to the Fender booth area in the middle of everything. So they decided this year they're going to put the Gretsch, Charvel, Jackson, and EVH off to the side on its own area. That was the greatest idea they did this whole year because they put all that traffic over in another area so that you're not bumping into like 500 people. You know, it's really interesting.
Speaking of Gretsch, did you meet anybody from Gretsch when you were there, or see anybody?
Yes, I did talk to him because okay, so
do you know who you spoke to?
Yeah, I got his card.
Mike Taft, by any chance?
It might have been. I've talked to all the different Gretsch people because when I looked over, I saw the Malcolm Young model, and I was floored because, not to get in long conversations, in 1979 I was a huge Eagles fan and the Kiss fan, and then when Highway to Hell came out, the 8-track, this is how old I am, 8-track came out, I was the biggest AC/DC fan in Nashville you ever saw, you know, like, and I was a huge AC/DC fan. So when I saw the Malcolm Young Gretsch, I had to go play it. It's like, and then I got to talk to the guys about how they built it, and it's really cool, interesting story. It's really neat. So I had to get all the details. I spent 45 minutes just talking about that alone. Okay.
Wow.
And so I got to talk the stories about, you know, the paint, you know, where the guitar originated, the original one. Where's the original one? Okay. And these are production models and the production models they made before. So he told me the whole full logistical story. It was really interesting. And I love talking to people in detail when I can. but I'd try not to talk too much technical information. I was asking him about the wood, how the wood was aged, how the molecules work, you know, the wood, you know, all the different things, how they were relicing the stuff. You know, you can look at a relic guitar and you can tell, you know, hey, how did they relic the hardware? How did they rust the hardware? How did it, you know, did they use like ammonia treatment or acid treatment or all the different ones, you know?
Because that's the stuff you got to be careful with, right? Like when it's got moving parts and stuff, you know.
Yes, exactly. So I got to talk to him about the Malcolm Young guitar, and that was incredible because that's one of my other hero guitars. You know, you got Eddie's guitars here, and then you got Malcolm Young, and then you got all these other people, and you know, different people like Alec Lifeson's guitars and stuff. So so I saw that, man, and my eyes just like exploded wide, you know, and it's like I could go over there and play it, and I got to play it for a minute, you know, and it plays like regular guitars, but I think he thought it was kind of strange when I'm sitting there with my eyes closed playing the guitar for 10 minutes, you know. So I do that a lot. You know, I said I want to feel the guitar. I want to feel the harmonics of the guitar and the vibrations. You can actually feel it. I do in my body and stuff. So and he laughed and he's like, well, when you get done, come see me. You know, after playing it and everything. So it's really cool.
And you were thinking, he's going to give me a guitar.
Exactly. And I wanted to talk to him about the retail price production model, you know, when the production comes out, and ask him about the drill holes in it, you know, because I'm the biggest geek like you guys on drill holes. And I saw the pit, you know, you got Malcolm Young's picture back there, and then you got the guitar. And I was asking him, hey, you know, what's the 3 silver top pieces? He's like, well, here's the story. You may not have heard this one before. You know, those little 3 silver things up on the guitar?
Yep.
So Malcolm?
I do not.
Okay, you'll see 3 silver dots. Those are actually from picture frames. When you put a picture on the back of the wall, it keeps it from denting the wall. And he thought that was cool to put on there. So that was from the 70s, you know. So he was on tour one time, you know, like Eddie, and he would go to the truck stop or somewhere and they'll find stuff, you know. Think about this, though. I was thinking about this other night. Early 80s. What was open at 24 hours a day? A bowling alley? 7-Eleven, a Waffle House, stuff like that. So most of these guys, when they get off the shows, you know, if you read some of the books of like Valerie and all these other people, and they say, look, you know, they're wired. When they get off the shows, you know, they got so much adrenaline. They can't just go back to the tour bus or go back to the hotel and sleep. You know, they're wired. So they would go bowling and stuff, or they would do all these different activities late at night because, you know, it's hard to take down your energy level after you do all these major shows and stuff, you know. So but you know, that's why you would find stuff like Eddie would do some really crazy stuff with a 5150 guitars. I've always learned so much, you know, when I learned a lot from all you guys over the years. Also, you got to understand, I mean, I don't have time to spend, you know, 7 to 8 hours some nights studying things, but when somebody tells me, hey, the 1982 guitar or 81 guitar had original prototype Floyd Rose on it, I had to start researching that and then start building it, then I had to make it, and then I had to make a copy of the original, and that's that. And then, you know, steel plates on it, and then the string the string plates underneath it and stuff like it. You know, you after about 2 weeks you become you get wrapped up in this stuff and you realize, oh my Lord, you know, it's like there's where all my time goes. And just like this that's just like the Trent's tremolo, you know, you know, I was lucky in Nashville. I've been finding a lot of guitars over the years in pawn shops and stuff in different places, music stores. And I found a G2T or the G2T Elite model at a music store for $600 about 15 years ago. And man, it's like brand new. And I bought it, you know, and it's really cool. And then I wanted to get a faceplate made for it a few years ago, and it took me 5 years just to find a faceplate for it. And those things are very hard to find anymore. And so I had one made, and Jeff Babbitt's helped me on that one a few years ago. So I did that one. So the Trent's tremolo is cool. A really cool tremolo.
So wait a second. What year was that prototype Floyd Rose?
I think it was 81. Now some of the guitars in 81 had them, and then I saw some that had in 82. Like Jim Francis, he had one. I think he found one in early 82 production model. If you look at some of the 82s on eBay, I saw one in Germany not long ago. It actually had the old FRT3 on it, with the non-fine tuners on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the FRT4 that had the 90-degree here. It had 90-degree up, and it ended at this point. I've got some of those at home. And then these are the original FRT5s. They're real thin. See how real thin they are here? They're real thin, and the base plate's thin. And then they've got these long bolts and the nuts on them. And then this washer, I got to find a new washer. You see how thin the washer is at the top? The original one is a thicker. The one I got at home in a parts bin for my 7th tuner 5150 is actually the original one based off this, and it's actually got a bigger washer there, and I've got to get a bigger washer for it eventually, and I will get one.
Well, the reason I asked about the date, because I knew it was that was pretty much it, but I mean, this is an EVH branded Floyd, but it's just amazing how look at that thing, basically the prototype, and not much has changed. I mean,
exactly.
The prototype Floyd Rose and what they make now, there's not much difference.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's really close, and you got to understand, these things were made. The first ones, I talked to Floyd, the person back at NAMM years and years ago. I've been going to the NAMM show since '85 in Chicago. So I've been going to all the NAMM shows over the years and meeting all these different people. And I talked to Floyd one time, and you got to understand it's hard to remember something in 1982. Even if you put it in a diary or something, it's still hard to remember. So he was like, I don't know, David. He's like, man, you got to understand that was so many years ago. And then I was like, how did you do this? How did you do that? And it's hard for somebody to be pinned down and ask them how they did something for 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And they just did
4 minutes ago.
4 minutes ago. Exactly. So, so the Floyds, they've come along, the manufacturing process has changed a little bit over the years. And then the metal, here's the biggest thing. The metal has changed so much in the last 30 years. Steel has been changed so much over the last 30 years, from the alloys and how they do the processing. And, it's like the old analog system. Just think of an old analog system from the 70s and 80s, and then you go down to the digital, and look how much more powerful a digital system is, and so much faster response rate is versus analog. But then, then you have disagreements between the analog sound and digital sound. But
the analog, you get like those harmonics and the coloring and all that stuff that that happens.
Yep. And so the steel has come a long way. So when I was researching the FRT5 years ago, I was going through and doing molecular structure reports of steel. The steel block, I had to research the steel block back here about what the thickness, there's like 25 different versions of steel, different ones. You got stainless steel, you got all your different steel alloys. And then I had to, so all these were made, the original ones were made in Japan. Because here's one thing I learned. The steel block is metric. Okay, this is metric. Everything on this thing is metric. Okay, but then you get to the threads here on this base plate, they're imperial. It's like a you remember the old cars from the early 80s. Early 80s cars had either metric and imperial, and they had both meshed together until they got into it, because when I was going to school back in the early 80s, they said that we're going to go to the metric system.
Yes, I remember being in 4th grade, and
yes.
I remember the teacher telling me the exact same thing. Oh, eventually we're going to be moving to the metric system.
Why in the world did we not go to the metric system?
I agree.
It's so much easier for me. It is, because translating all the stuff and everything, and then formulas and calculators and everything.
I guess it just makes more sense. But I still don't get it.
It's universal. Like English is universal around the world to a point, and then you go to, Spain, and you can't speak Spanish or French, and then you got to have an interpreter, stuff like that. But metric systems is global operation system. So I've been doing all my designs and stuff in metric over the years. And then, so the the units that I have at home, I've got a couple of the Steinberg trench tremolos, and I'm putting all that in metric format. And I'll go into more detail at another meeting one day, and I'll pull out a Steinberg trench tremolo, I'll tear it apart, and I'll show you how everything works. There's some cam systems in there. They use brass rollers for the rollers on the string, and then they got cam mechanisms, and they got spring tensions up underneath it. So you have to think of a guitar with a bridge that goes across and a string all the way to the nut where it goes. So there's a mathematical formula that goes from the nut all the way to the bridge post where it goes. And then when you move the bar, how a trench tremolo works, you move the bar up and down because it locks into place. So you pull it back, it goes to A. I'm sorry, E.
It went up a whole. Did it go up a whole step?
It goes up a half step, and then it goes up another half step, and it goes up to a full step. So, and then it can go down 3 full steps, but you can lock it in gear. I'll have to show you guys.
Did it not go down a half step?
Yes,
or did it?
It did.
Because somebody told me it didn't go down a half step, and I'm like, why wouldn't it go down a half step? Like that makes sense.
Yeah, and you can't. Okay, so here's where it comes into play. Really cool, and it can get really elaborate quickly. What happens is you tune the guitar to E flat, or the trench tremolo to E flat. Because it's got the tuners at the back, and it's the headstock is locked here, but you got the tuners in the back, and you can tune it to E flat. Then when you record across it, it's E flat. So then. Now, when he was working with Sammy, he tuned it standard because of the vocal range. You guys know Roth had a lower vocal range than Sammy for a lot of recordings. So they detune. A lot of bands still detune. They detune down to D now and stuff like that because of the vocals. It's less range issues with live. A lot of times when I used to play live, I would play sharp. I would tune my guitar sharp.
Just to mess with the singer? No, I'm joking.
Well, when you play now I used to do this because when I played live a lot, I played really hard on some of the strings sometimes, and then my guitar would equalize out through some of the songs and stuff. Okay, so what I was going to say was the trench tremolo. Say that you're in E, and then you're going to cross pollen. It's what it does is it's a modulation alignment. So what happens is when you record across it and you play like a D chord, and you're tuned to standard E. So you'll take that D chord and you modulate that when you pull it up, just like a capo on a guitar. You know how capos work. So it's a moving capo in a way, but it's a inventive idea. This thing's a genius product that they built over 30 years ago, but not many people used it.
No.
Eddie used it, Alan Hollandsworth did, and a few other people, but they never. So there's so many things you could do with this thing. So say you're in D, and then you can go up. That's what he did in some of the songs. He was sitting there, and you hear it.
The beginning of Summer Nights is up.
Yeah.
And then when the drums kick in, you hear it.
He goes down.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you'll say you're in a 6/4 time or a 4/4 time, and then you're doing Summer Nights, and you're going through it, or Get Up song, and then you do the bar. I'll have to show you guys. I don't know if Rob ever did this. Did Rob ever explain how he does the trench tremolo pull up and bar? Dino Norelli. He did a video years ago, man. I couldn't believe he was on one of my group pages the other day. Man, it made my day. He was on it. He went on the EVH guitar database, building database page I had, and it's like, and I had to instant message him real quick. I didn't mean to get off topic, but I was like, "Hey, are you the Dino from all the videos years ago?"
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. It's like, cool, dude. Because me and him talked. That's like, man, I met you years ago at the, Kramer used to have. One more thing I'll tell you real quick. Kramer used to have at the NAMM shows. They had a Kramer Expo every year all the way up to 2004, and I would go to those expos and I would take all the pictures of all the Ripleys and all the different guitars and all the different people. Paul Unger was there 1 year or 2 years. You get to meet all these people in front of you, and ask all the questions and talk to everybody, and it was really cool to talk to people but the thing of it is, it was the same weekend of the NAMM show. The NAMM shows used to be Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays in Nashville in the 90s and all the way up to 2004. And they moved to 2005. But but I used to go to them and I would sit there and talk to all the different people. And, you know, it's hard to remember. Like I say, even for me, it's hard to remember some of these people. I was at the expos and stuff and meet all these people. And it's like, it was a huge community like we do now. But it was really cool to hang out with people, and you can actually pick up, you know, they had guitars lined up all down the rows, and you pick up one and play it. Nobody would ever say anything. You know, it's really cool. You know, you got to see all the different ones. I've got pictures of all the old expo shows, like the Vintage Kramer, but I've got to find them on my cameras. You know, because back in those days, you had those little snap, zip, zip, zap, zip, zip. You know, the you know, the little cameras, you know, the little portable cameras, you know, you don't have anything like this back in those days. And it was really fun to see those. But, you know, back on the topic of guitars and stuff now, but man, some people.
Before we get off the Steinberger Transtrem topic, I have a question.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead and ask it now. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask it now. Hey. Was there ever any talks? I don't know if you guys know this or if the story's out there, whatever, but were there any talks of other guitar companies going to Steinberger saying, hey, we want to put your tremolos on our guitars, like on production guitars maybe, or something like that, or Steinberger going to other guitar companies maybe when sales started to go down, saying, hey, do you want to put our tremolos on your guitars? Was there anything like that? Does anybody know about? Don't all answer at once.
All they had to do, let me go back and I'll explain some stuff to you. You know, there's a difference between a patent and a trademark and copyright. Okay, so if say that you build a Gidget and you want to patent it, you have 18 years up to. It depends on how the patents are designed, but most of them are 18 to 24 years. Then you have a trademark that people can use that product under a license. You know, when you see things under, it says,
oh yeah, license under Floyd Rose.
Exactly. So they get a royalty from that. Okay, you can make 5,000 of them at a certain price, and then they have to pay a royalty fee. You know, like most items. It's changed over the years in the last 25 years between the countries and stuff. And then, you know, there's actually talk right now in some of the political fields about some of this stuff they're talking about right now. So I never heard, you know, that's an interesting question in a lot of ways, because you got to understand, when Ned Steinberger designed the Trans Tremolo, and you know, it took him 3 years to build this thing. 3 full years. And if you see some of the old pictures, you'll see you know, where it's flat at the Steinberg nut. He had a device that it was setting up the intonation, and you'll see some of the pictures. It's a big, huge steel rusty part now, and it had it on the neck, and he was actually making the string length. So whenever he was transposing, he had to make sure all the intonation. That's the other thing you understand. The Trans Tremolo intonates across the whole spectrum of modulation. And that is the most incredible thing I've ever seen over the years. I saw one today at NAMM that the guy has a it's called a transmission tremolo, and I took pictures of it today and posted it online. And I'm going to do some web Skype calls with a guy.
How did I miss that? It's on Facebook.
It's on Facebook on my page.
See you guys later.
You can see it. All right, but and what it does is it moves back and forth, and it's like a gear mechanism. It's same thing, same idea as the Trans Tremolo. But so I did hear a story one time. I wasn't there for it, but I did hear a story from some people from Gibson that they had a full shipment of Steinberg parts, and I don't know if you guys heard this story, and I heard they had like 1,000 Trans Tremolos in boxes, brand new, never used ever. And they went in a forklift and in a dumpster. That's $2 million automatically right there, at least. Okay, you got to understand, these things are $1,500 to $2,000.
Where's the landfill? Where is it? Let's book in a flight tomorrow. Let's go dig them up. You got to understand, that was like a hearsay rumor, you know, that I heard. But yeah, that came from people at the factory, is what I will say. Hope somebody got fired.
I don't know. And, you know, Okay, so I'm gonna tell you one more thing. I've always thought this would be the coolest thing. I told somebody at work the other day, he's a guitar player and everything. I said, you know what would be the coolest thing a Gibson would do? Is Gibson would be sold, but to artists. Think about this for a minute. If you had 25 artists that went in to a LLC, limited liability company, or a constructional agreement company, and they all own the company together, but they own the company. So EVH and like Slash and Zach Wild, all these people would own it. But when they put their name on the product,
Johnny Beane, Steve Anderson, David Allen, Wright. Let's add those names to the pot here. Come on.
Exactly. But what I would love to see is you would have a owner that's the endorsee in a way, you know, then having a product that's a licensed product through an entity company, you know, like, you know, EVH is a licensed product of Fender. And but I'm saying what would be coolest of all is you would have a guitar company that you actually own, you know, with all your other endorsees, and they would actually own the company. So Eddie wanted to come out with a Les Paul Trance Tremolo. It would he be his model, you know, just like the Alex Lifeson Gibson Les Paul with the Graphite Tech Floyd Rose with the piezo pickups in the bridge mechanism, you know, that one, you know, and had the stereo on it and stuff like that. So I've always wondered why it would be, I was always thinking it would be really cool to have a guitar company that all the main people would own, and then they would be able to control it. If they wanted to build a new guitar or they wanted to re-release something, it would have been an easier perspective of releasing. Because another thing that I think not many people may understand is, you know, when you want to build a guitar and release it into the mass production, it takes over a year to 2 years sometimes for legal. You have to go through trademark processing. You have to go through all the different information, release contracts, you know, and manufacturing processes on top of that. So if you want to make 5,000 or just say the 8 guitars that Chip had to build, you have to go through a lot of, you know, they already, so Fender, here's the thing, Fender owns the Strat headstock and they own the body. So you don't have to worry about that part.
Yep.
That's the other way. So then you have to think, well, let me get the body, let me paint it, and let me stripe it up, and let me see how long it takes me to make it accurate. Okay. Yeah. Say that's 150 hours or say 200 hours. Let's say 200 hours. Okay, then you've got to find a tremolo, you know, then you have to start researching and back researching the tremolo to figure out, you know, then you find out later it had a steel block on it, you know, then you have to redesign the tremolo to fit the brass block that goes up underneath it or steel block. Then you have to go in and find out, you know, okay, so did they talk about the strings?
Yes, the 40... you know, 9 to 40 with the 15 G string. Is that what he was talking about? Yeah.
Yes. And they said to me, it took 8 months for that.
What was the reason? Why did it take 8 months?
They had to get them. See, all the string companies do not make gauges anymore. So you know how a lot of string companies work, right? You know, say that Music Man makes most of the strings for entity division of a lot of companies. They just stamp it. You know, it's just like, you know, like, okay, so prime example, you go to Walmart and you want to get a Coca-Cola versus a Sam's Club cola. It's made by the same company, it just got a different stamp on it. Okay. So so if you want to make a custom string set, you have to order probably 10,000 possibly or 5,000. So Fender has their own string company. So you know what I asked them the first thing? I said, well, all you got to do is spool up a string part. And he's like, no, it's not that easy. He's like, we had to go and retool stuff. You have to retool it. So you're going to have to actually find the machine from the 70s that has that special gauge, or you're going to have to machine the parts, like CAD design it and everything, and build it to produce that string.
Huh.
Wow.
It sounds simple, but you got to understand, anytime when you like, I could tell you all the stories that I'm going through. So if I want to build something, I have to go find the tool, the part, the design, and then design the part, recondition it, 3D print it, go back, research it, and then voila, 3 years later, it's done. you know, stuff like that. But it is a complicated process, and I think some people may not understand the details that have to go into this, you know, not just the legal precedents from it, but the manufacturing and the processing and all that stuff. And then when you have, so here's the great thing. If you have a major company that has all these resources, it really helps. It speeds up.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting there trying to build something, but they wouldn't go into full details, but I will say that there is a process where you have to really consider the process of making special strings. And if you went to all the suppliers that made all the strings in America or Canada and stuff and say, hey, I'm trying to make this, you know, 15 gauge string, and they're like, we haven't made that in 30 years. The machines are gone.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have the machines anymore. We destroyed them years ago. Or they're somewhere in a warehouse somewhere and they don't work, you know. So it's like making a, here's a great one too. Like you have a 68 Camaro and you want to get the quarter panels off a 68 Camaro. Now there's a couple of companies that make them, but they're not the same thickness of the metal that was previously made in 68 because they used a different metal molecules. The metals changed over the years, anti-corrosions and all that stuff. So when you buy, you go to year one and you buy a body panel, it is the design of the car, but it's not the thickness of the original metal.
Mm-hmm.
But they've come a long way with the metal. It's, you know, anti-rust, primered, ready for paint, you know, all that stuff. They worked out all the issues over the years, but it's still not the original part. So, you know, in a way, I'm just trying to give you elaborate details of some of the things that goes on behind the scenes that's really complicated. You think it sounds easy, but it gets complicated quick. But here's the thing. Fender now has custom strings made, and they can make all they want of them for the next 5 to 10 years or whatever, you know. So somebody will want to, you know, I imagine they'll be starting to sell those custom string sets to regular, you know, people that want to try that string set, you know.
I would have asked, how many of the 3-in-1 oil cans did you actually get at garage sales and yard sales and stuff? Because could you imagine, guys, you're having a yard sale or a garage sale, and, you know, I don't know who they would send out to do that type of thing. But imagine, like, all of a sudden it's like, hey, can we look inside your garage? We see, you know, do you have any old and you're asking why and stuff like that. Could you imagine, hey, you know, I'm surprised somebody didn't like post on a VH forum or something. You know, hey, somebody from EVH or Fender came to my house and they took my 3-in-1 oil.
Here's another thing. Sometimes when you have to go out and research stuff, you cannot commit information. Like, you'll have to find somebody that can do stuff for you. Okay, let me just say that. So they're not sending,
you know, Chip Ellis out to do it, or Matt from EVH. They're sending, you know, Joe Schmoes from the company out.
Well, probably the first thing you see is you start seeing email queries or search command queries on the servers at Fender, looking on eBay for oil cans.
Yeah.
You know, so then you're like, and then, you know, they can't disclose this information. You got to understand, you know, this is one of these, it's like building a new car, a new Corvette or a new Ferrari. So you got to start building all the processes in place. So if you wanted to build, you know, get the oil cans, so you're going to start looking on eBay and Craigslist and starts looking at search command systems around the world and start, you know, there are actually companies out there that say that you want to find something, you can hire a company that's like a search engine company, and you tell them the criteria you want, you pay them like, you know, say $200, and they'll find it for you. I'm serious. I mean, there's some stuff out there that a lot of people, I guess, don't. I use it from company side, but I'm saying so that if I'm looking for a certain server part for a server at my company that I need, and I need it by 24 hours, and I can get one like in Australia that's not being made anymore and get it here, you know, $2,500 later, the part's here in 24 hours. But I'm just saying, you know, you can search, you can build custom search engines. I've built some custom search engines over the years that find certain keywords. It finds about 600 keywords a week for different things around the world. I search all over the world, Australia, China, Russia. I have to transpose the languages. I used to work with 14 languages back in the day, and I transposed all the languages. Transposed all the languages from English.
Enough problems with one.
Exactly. Simplified Chinese was the worst one I've ever had to work with, man. It was rough, but I use those type sites information, and I can search stuff, and you can find stuff in eastern blocks of Europe and Russia and China and stuff like that. So you can find different things. So, but let me go back on this one. So you're looking for a 1977 oil can, okay, and you know, you'll find them at like yard sales and flea markets and probably antique stores, you know, people like that.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wonder, that's an interesting question. How many did they find? And then, so I wonder if there's a company out there that can build 3D, vintage oil cans now, you know, because that's a big market now for some people. You know, you go out, you know, those old Phillips 66 gas pumps. You know, when we were growing up, you saw those everywhere, but Phillips 66 doesn't exist anymore. You know, and then people make relics now, or they make reproductions. So I wonder if somebody out there, you know, anything can barely be made if you have enough money, time, and resources. So I just wonder, you know, they probably had to find 8 of them, and then, you know, if they could find more than 8, you know, if I was somebody building these things, I say, look, I need 8 of them first.
And if we can find more,
then let's put them into the other production, you know, because, you know, how many of the 12 K ones are they making? I forgot. I'm sorry. I just
is it 30? Is it 30 of those ones? And then 8 of the more expensive one. Yeah. And then what is it?
And then 40 of the other ones,
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it equals 78.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay, good. Hey, that's great. I didn't realize 78. So, okay, so 78 oil cans. And, you know, it may take them, you know, months to find them, but, you know, they found them, you know, just say that they found them and all.
Well, 38, you said, right?
It would be 78, right?
No, I don't think the oil can coming with the cheap one? Cheap one. Yeah.
I don't know.
The cheaper one?
It's on the site. I think it's the two.
I thought it was the top 2.
The top 2, I think. It's the case and all the case candy and stuff, and then, but the one that's the most expensive has the one where there's only 8 available. That's the one with the thumb drive of Eddie playing the guitar and stuff.
Yeah. He plays Eruption and he puts the pen drive into the case. I don't know if he signs the back of he signs the back of the guitar also. Thursday. And then I'll tell you what I would have loved to have done. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay.
That was, you're talking fast. Yeah, he signs the back of the headstock, I think.
Okay.
And then he signs like Van Halen 1 album, the Looney Tunes album. I think maybe that book, the book that has all the pictures in it. Man, I want to see that stuff.
And that stuff has never been seen before. Is what they told me.
So you're saying there's pictures in there of the Frankenstein guitar before it was painted when he was playing it? Because there's only like one picture out there of that.
There's his mother was taking all these pictures. What I was told was his mother. They found the picture collection like a year ago, and because it was in storage apparently, and they found it, and it's like, oh my God, we have all these pictures from '77 before the tour started, and they talked about he had pictures all the way through the '78 tour when he come back, and she was taking pictures of the guitar before he painted it. So they have '77 all the way through all of '78 is what I was told. So and that gets released with the 8 versions, you know, the 8 models. And it's going to be interesting. You know, it will come out eventually. You'll start seeing it, but it may take 6 months to 8 months. You know, somebody will buy one.
Who do we know who's going to buy one of those? I want to see that book.
They're probably already sold.
Oh, they're not sold yet. I did ask that question. I said, you know, they told me they're going to a lottery. The lottery, each music store, like Guitar Center will get one. Sam Ash will get one. Who else is the other? Sam Ash. Guitar Center owns music.
The Sweetwater. Sweetwater get one.
Sweetwater will get one. He told me Guitar Center owns Musician Friend. They only get one, unless there's some kind of special condition written. I think that's what I was told to a point. But there's major major music corporations out there. You got Sweetwater.
Yeah, so Bill's guitar store on the corner ain't getting one.
I don't think so, unless they can pull up. You know how it is. They'll have to put up $25,000 and then get the guitar, and then they have to do the earnest fund, earnest money fund. So it would be interesting, but it'd be I just wonder.
Somebody actually called me the other day. I did a video with Alex talking about, what was this, Thursday morning? I guess?
Yeah, the day it was announced.
As soon as it was announced, we did a video talking about it. And right after we were done, somebody from LA called me. I've got a public number on all over my pages and everything. They called that number asking me where they can get one of the 8. Like, how can they get one?
Do you give them your PayPal address? I'll ship one to you. Here's my PayPal.
And I texted him back saying, well, any info I get, we'll post it. So I don't know if the guy's watching this. I mean, probably not. But so David, though, you're saying that all the major chain stores will get one, or they're bidding. They're bidding to get one?
It's a lottery. What I heard was a lottery. So when you have like Guitar Center and Sam Ash and then Sweetwater, they already have accounts with Fender already. Say that they want to order 2,500 Wolfgangs, in October. So it goes into the database, and they're probably using a procurement site, some major enterprise procurement site system. So it goes into their database, and it goes through their order processing systems. So they're already credited to, $500,000 of orders for that month or something, So each one will be picked in a lottery is what I heard. And then, they already have the account set up for the wire transfer deposit, that so Fender will get paid when they get the guitar instrument, to their location. So usually that goes through the third-party bank systems, how most enterprise financial
offshore
systems
banks.
Exactly. Where's that Swiss bank account?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting from that part, but that's all behind the scenes really from that perspective. But then when you go to so here's the question I would love to know too. When you buy one of these things, you have to pay state and local taxes in some states. So you got to understand, it's like buying a car, $25,000 plus taxes.
And you got to get it shipped.
Yeah, the shipping should be free, but I'm just saying shipping. Yeah, well, it depends on where you buy it too.
The insurance on it.
So Joe Suma might get one, if he finds a customer that can, has it. So Joe Suma might have one, he might be able to get one and get his hands on it and stuff. So I still believe. Oh, by the way, I did ask this: how many are going to be in the European part and the Asian market, like Japan? And then how many will be going to the Eastern Bloc? And they told me 5. Sorry, not five. I'm saying 3. I'm sorry, 3. 3 will be going to Europe, and then there's possibly 2 going to Asia.
Does it surprise you that they didn't have make 300 of them like they did 11 years ago with the red Frankenstein?
Yeah, I still believe they wanted to do the aesthetics of the 78. What you're saying. Plus, I want to tell you, I'd really be shocked they made that many before the 300, because sourcing the parts is hard already. Like, you have to find 300 oil cans, and then you got to understand Eddie has to sign 300 different guitars plus the albums. His hands gonna be tired after 2 or 3 days, signing all this stuff. So, you have to build all this stuff before it gets shipped anyway. So, So I'm just thinking it may be a sourcing material issue too, because you can make all the necks and bodies you want, and then you just got to spend maybe 50 to 100 hours painting it, striping it, and everything, and then assemblies, say 5 hours assembly, and then fret level work and all that stuff. Just say that.
Maybe Chip was like, "I'm not painting 300 of these things again. I'm not doing that."
I did ask him a question. Let me just say this one. You remember the Wolfgang that came out years ago that had the lines in it? You remember the recreation from the 05 tour. I mean, the 2015 tour. You know, the Wolfgang had all the relic with the lines in it. What he did with a razor blade. You remember that one?
The which
the white Wolfgang, it was black and then painted white, and then they reliced it.
Okay. Oh, the tour relic. Yeah, 2015.
He put it into a hyperbaric chamber, and he, hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold, and then it cracked and all that stuff. So the first one that Eddie got was the original master, and then because each one of them was articulately created by the thermo chamber. So I asked Chip this question just to joke with him. I said, hey, you can actually recreate that. You would have to scan the original body, and you would put that in a CAD file, and you would use a CAD program to do the distance. Think about a needle, and the needle would go across, and it would do the lines. But the arch top would have to be compensated for the depth perception. And he's like, we did it. It's going to take too long. It'll take 8 months to do it. So I had to do it by hand. Oh. And I said, how long did it take? And he laughed at me. He's like, guess. And I was like, well, I don't want to guess, man, because I don't want to, say a bad comment. But he gave me a number. It was interesting. Let's just say.
Hey, David, cool. There's a question here for you. Can you go into the oil can and why that's needed for the 78?
Okay. So Eddie used the oil can for, you guys might know this, because they lubricated the brass nut up there. Back in those days, we didn't have Teflon. Back in those days, this is 77, 78, and no locking nut. The Floyd Rose wasn't coming out for, Floyd at that time. Floyd Rose is up in Spokane, Washington, and Seattle, Washington, working on all his old stuff back in the day. And then Eddie was in Pasadena, still unknown. He was a locally known, all over LA, but nobody really knew him outside of that area. Unless you saw him and then went back home, Sunset Boulevard or whatever. But so what he was doing was he was putting oil on the brass nut for the lubrication of the string, so that when he would break across it, Hendrix was the biggest one over this too. He used to put oil on his nuts and stuff because he had to, or oil on his guitar compensating part. So Eddie had to do that, and that's why he kept an oil can in the case. And I heard a story about that where it leaked out all of his case back in the day and stained it and all that stuff. So maybe the relic version will have an oil stain in the case. But that's what I was told. So
yeah, David Allen, my big question to you is, and Jay always licks his chops at this, like when Gibson was having all these problems and it looked like maybe Kramer was going to shut down, we used to sit here and think, well, maybe EVH would sort of do some kind of buy of Kramer so that we can have like a Chip Ellis relict Kramer 5150. Is there any talk of that, or is that classified? Or
that's classified.
No comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please. That goes into some legal precedents that we really don't want to avenue from that. But I would love to see it. I would just say that it would be interesting, because here's a thing I would love to see. Just think of this for a minute. Gibson owns Baldwin Piano. They own Wurlitzer, or they did, and they own Kramer. They own Steinberger. They own all that. So really, technically, Gibson has a whole line that they could use. They got the Steinberger with a trans trim.
Yeah.
They could have built the I keep forgetting it. The G2T or G2T or GT, what is it? G2T model, the little one, little square
headless
one, the headless with a trans tremolo on it, with a stripe program. And also they could come out with the 12 string. You remember the 12 string? That was very rare. I'm still looking for one, but they want $9,000 for the 12 string one.
Mm-hmm. The 0812 one.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bridge, I was talking about this months ago, and then Tim Lennox talked to me about this.
Toolbox.
He's like, he's like, you're wrong, David. You got the wrong bridge. I was like, no, this is the 12-string version, not the trans tremolo. He's like, well, they never made a 12-string trans tremolo. I was like, no, I didn't say that. I'm saying that they made a 12-string bridge compensation system for the OU182.
OU812.
Yep. I think that was the one. And you didn't see that guitar much. It was only in a few magazines. He played it live in '88 and I think early '89 on the Monsters of Rock tour and the Japanese tour, I think, leg that he played it a little bit, but that was it. And then let me think real quick. Steinberg had that. Then you have the Kramer models. But here's the other thing that you have to go into effect. Here's one thing that you have to really consider. Eddie he had to go after the copyright trademark of the stripe systems back in the 90s. You remember all the controversy back in those days where he was shutting down sites and everything. But he had to get all that in his name, in his company entity. So then you have to protect that part, and then you can make the bodies and paint. You can paint all the guitars all you want, but you have to get all that scheme down. All the trademark and copyrights and all this stuff. So the Frankenstrat guitar, then you would have to go. So here comes another part. If you really wanted to do a 5150, a true relic 5150, you got to source a Floyd Rose well tail. You'd have to make those. Say that, okay, so let's say that they make 51 of them.
Yeah.
Okay, just say 51 of them. You'd have to come up with 51 whale tails. That can be done. They're about now we got the prices down quite a bit, because the first time I was working on them, they were like $1,400 a piece for each one, and then I got them all the way down. So the more orders I was able to get, and Jim got for me, we put their price way down. By quantity. So say that you're going to make 51 of them. Say the floor. Just say the rate would be $400 for just because you're buying 51 of them, and you're buying them right then. You're paying the payments to the manufacturer right that day, not increment payments. So you do that. Then you got to get the JB59. If you're going to use that one, so you have to source those, and then you got a relic to pick up. That's a lot of labor hours there. Then you have to get the body and then the neck, and you have to relic the body and the neck and the frets and everything. And then you would have to do all your license agreements. It'll take 6 to 8 months for license agreements usually, because EVH has to license agreements with everything, legal restraints and everything. Then after he does some trial and error, say he spends 2 weeks with the guitar, and then he signs the back of the headstock and he sends it back and said, look, it's approved for production. Then you would have to do the hand production systems. And then you I would say, let's just guess 300 hours all together for each guitar. That's just saying all the production systems you have to go through, because you have to line everything up. It's all about alignment really too, so that you would have to get all the production systems set up. You have to get the tremolos built. You have to get the humbuckers, like when we build a guitar, I'm building guitars that's taken 3 years to build,
Well, he put the Frankenstein pickup in that guitar, so he would probably, maybe rewind one. Who knows what he would do? But
here's that 12 string. If you guys wanted to see it, that's the one, David Allen, down here. That 12 string you're talking about.
There's a Steinberger 12 string.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in that same book. Look for the headless.
Okay.
You'll see a headless Steinberger, and it says OE812, and that's a 12. It's a 12 string, but
the tremolo does what it is the fixed bridge tremolo. It doesn't move.
Right.
And it's
hey,
rare.
Kevin. Yeah.
Very rare.
Kevin, good to see you, man. Ken is in here. Clayton James. Yes, today is Strat Day, man. Fender Guru. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
And I'm not able to see the chat, so you'll have to just
yeah, we've been firing the questions to you as we see them. Yeah.
No problem. You can always Facebook me, hit me up on Facebook later after, if you have a question. But there's certain things that I cannot discuss. I will say I have to tell you that, because certain things cannot be divulged in detail sorry. I mean, I have to be protected on certain things
Of course,
that
yeah.
I've seen and talked and everything like that over the years and stuff. I have to. It's like a reporter. You have to protect your sources. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So certain things, you know, you get to meet people and talk to them off the record and stuff, and you get to hear things, but you have to be very careful of what the data, like a data breach, because we don't want a EVH Snowden. You know, in a way, but I will say this: there's a lot of complicated moving parts behind the scenes that I think a lot of people don't realize that goes on when you build something. And you know, it's just like anytime you want to build you know, any kind of Wolfgang or guitar or a Strat guitar or whatever. And but you know, Eddie has been trying to. You got to understand, when I was growing up, man, Eddie would never talk about his guitars. You remember those days? He would tell interviews, and he would say one interview, he would do this, and he did another one. I was sitting there when I was building guitars when I was a kid. It's like, oh my God, how did he? You know, back in those days, we didn't even think about the wood. You know, the different woods and stuff. We just built a guitar when we was able to get one, and we painted up and try to. You know, we were always trying to be the most accurate at the time, but. You know, but
well, remember the interview he did when he talked about, you know, the whole Variac thing, when he basically explained it backwards and had people blowing up their amps trying to do the exact same thing, and they told him like, Ed, you gotta, you know, I think one of the next interviews he kind of like switched it around because people were blowing their amps up.
Exactly.
Sorry guys, here. This is the 12-string trans string we're talking about. Yeah,
it's got single coil, and then it's got a humbucker, and it's got the 12 string. It's hard to see in that picture. You know, I've got this magazine, and I tried to. A few years ago, I got this magazine in Japan, and I scanned it and put it into PDF format, and I put it on the Google Drive and shared it and everything. But I was trying to blow it up, and I'll tell you what I'm working on too. Here's another project I'm working on after like 15 projects. I'm trying to take all the pictures from that magazine and put them into a plotter printer and print them out to full size. Right. But there's some mathematical formulas that I got to work out. You know, Devin Hall did some of this years ago for some of the stuff, but I've got to go in and take the like photo illustrator or something. And then, you know, if somebody out there can do this, it would be cool. And then I can run it through a plotter printer and we can print out stuff. But, it's a lot of detail work you have to do. You know, it sounds like an easy concept, but there's some of the stuff that you have to really go into detail, like because the pictures are a format size already in the magazine.
Sorry, David. Jay Hannon wanted to see this again.
It just I'm looking at Eddie. Looks like he has a Rambo wig on.
Sorry.
Does he have a headband on?
Yeah, he has a headband. Yeah,
it's like a wig.
So that picture with that Steinberg was an early picture because Jeff Babbitt's took that. He made him a custom faceplate, and they switched it out in the middle of the tour. You know, on the Steinberg, and the first leg of the tour, he was using the black and white, the black with the white Steinberger faceplate.
Yeah, I have a picture of where the heck is it, of him and Sammy on stage together, and he's playing a black Steinberger. I don't know if it's the 5150 tour book or not.
It had to be in early '86 when the tour started in Shreveport. You know, and then they started playing some of the shows. And
you talking about this one, Jay, down here?
I've seen that one, but there's one. Is Sammy standing next to him?
No.
That's strange. Usually when you know,
it's the same one.
Yeah, it's the same one. Yep.
It's the same guitar.
Yeah, it wasn't in this. I actually saw the picture not like a couple days ago. I was looking at something and yeah, whatever. But
so David Allen, we've got the next year will be the 40th anniversary of the Bumblebee. Any chance of them doing something a relic version of that?
Well, that's an interesting question. I didn't ask this question yet, but they see Fender Musical Corporation owns Charvel, so that could be an entity. That could be like a relic entity. You know, like I don't know. Here's the problem. Ed had all kind of problems with that guitar when he built it. You know, and I think I have my own suspicion of what happened. it wasn't the tone of the guitar as much as an endorsement deal. You see what I mean from that aspect? I think because if it was so much of a tone hassle, there's a lot of European videos that he played that guitar live. I mean, he played. I was watching some video from '78 European. I found some stuff off some torch sites, and I've got like 12 terabytes of live shows over the years of Van Halen from '77 all the way to like, you know, late '90s and 2000s and stuff, you know, when they were like 2004 stuff. There's some video out there of him playing all these European shows with that guitar. And what I think it is, I mean, this is my speculation. It's just my thought. So the disclaimer at the bottom will say this is David Allen Wright's as commentary without legal
personal opinion does not reflect.
Exactly.
You can put my name with it too, because I'm thinking the same as you, because Ed gives all this strange information. But yeah, it was probably some kind of endorsement thing. He loved it, but yeah.
I think he did. Because, you know, back, you know, okay, so let's go back for a minute. 77, you know, let's go back to so you walk into a music store in 1977, there's not that many guitars back in those days. It was all single coil. There was hardly any, nobody built a humbucker and a Strat, you know, that was like taboo. You don't do that. You buy a Les Paul, you know, and back in those days we had limited resources compared to what happened with Ed, because Ed changed the whole landscape of a lot of the guitars. So in 1978, when I got into Van Halen around late 1980, after Bon Scott died and John Bonham died, and then my brother, he was older and he played, you know, all his musical instruments and everything. I'll tell you this one real quick too. I didn't know this until older. I heard Van Halen in 1977. My brother got the album and he started learning the songs the first week there, and man, he was like nailing all the stuff. And it's like, because he would be able to take all the stuff and learn it note to note, because he had perfect and relative pitch better than I ever did. So everything he plays, he could be able to play it instantly. You know, it's like, oh my God. So when I was young, I never understood what I was listening to until years later. And then I was like, oh, some friend played a Van Halen song for me one day when I was at his house, and it's like, oh man, who's that? You know, and it, you know how it is. The first time you see something or hear something, it's completely different. But then what happened was then you get into you see the back album cover, and then because I got into Van Halen at Women and Children First with the Shark album cover, and you stare at, you know, you'd be listening to the album for 4 hours and you're staring at the back and front album cover, you know, because you don't know anything about the band, you know. This is the back before the pre-internet days. So that was really interesting. And Wayne Charvel had a really good interview with Mark and Dave Friedman, the first one they ever did, and Wayne Groover Jackson was on it, and he talked about that guitar. He talked about how they had to build it, and it was like they had 12 hours to finish everything, and he had to do a photo shoot that next day with the album cover and everything. And but I've always wondered about that, because I just believe that the guitar that he had was going to be his new signature guitar, in my opinion, meaning that was going to be the EVH signature, the black and yellow Bumblebee, but something did not materialize, you know, because Eddie was starting out to become a superstar then. You know, the second album came out, he started finding his own tone, because the first album is totally different than all the other albums from sound, you know. And then the Van Halen 2 album pretty much brought in the Brown sound, because Eddie could call his shots then. And then I believe, you know, because he had his own homemade guitars, you know, then, and he had his plexi head back in the day, and, you know, running variacs and stuff like that, and controls. And a lot of it, you guys, you gotta understand, it's different to record in a studio than it is to play live, you know. And there's a big difference in that, because, you know, you bring out all your main equipment in studios and you record, and you got, you know, it's like a lot of dress rehearsals. You record, and then you get the tone that you want. But then when you go live, you know, you're using production environment systems like heads and stuff, because you don't want to bring your plexi out on tour unless you have to, because, you know, that's so valuable, you know. But you know, back when you're being discovered, you know, you're trying to to get the most exposure and stuff. And it was in the Smithsonian Institute he did. It was really interesting. They interviewed him, and he talked about, when we come back from tour, we were like, what, $2 million in debt, or $1 million. You remember that? He talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And Noel Monk talked about it in his book.
And by the way, and you owe us this money, and you owe us a new album in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly. And that's how the record deals work. And they're thinking, oh my goodness, we've been out on tour for a year and we thought we made money, but we actually didn't make any money, well, like cost of expenses and all this stuff. It's really interesting later in the book when you read it about when they get to the 1984 album and they record it. And it's really interesting what Sammy talked about. It's like when these guys got off tour and David Lee Roth was going to be a movie star, and he leaves because Warner Brothers had him signed with a three movie deal, you remember, and he took off, and then they're in the Leech is trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they're like, we're recording because they're under contract. See, the Van Halen is still under contract to deliver an album in 6 months or 8 months. And you got to understand, guys, think about this. Say that you got a record deal contract and they can sue you for like $12 to $15 million. What are you going to do? You can't sit at home figuring out what we're going to do with the next singer. So these are musicians. You got to understand you're under contractual agreement. All right. So you have to say, hey, what are we going to do? So, we got a couple of different ones, different people you can get as singers of Van Halen, because I love Patti Smythe from Scandal, but I don't think that would have worked out really well. He toured with her and all that stuff. Valerie talked about it deep in her book and everything about that Eddie had a really special relationship with Patti Smythe, and Patti Smythe talked about it years later in her books and stuff. But back on the conversation, everybody wants to criticize everything now. But you got to understand, in 1985, the whole music scene was different and everything. So go back to what you think about what Eddie's doing in his studio, him and his brother and Michael, and they're sitting there thinking, what are we going to do? We got all this material from the last album and the stuff that we got to do now, and we don't have a singer, and then
so you agree with that, David, that David Lee Roth left the band, or do you think that he was fired?
I think he was left, because when I was reading all this stuff back in the day, you remember he has some interviews. He talks about he was going to do a 3-movie deal with Warner Brothers. And the first movie, they had a script and everything written. You'll go back in some of the interviews, because I remember this watching it years ago. He said that he had a movie called, what's that hit song he had? Not a Gigolo, but the other one.
California Girls?
Yeah, it was designed around California Girls, and he was going to be some kind of, he talks about it in an interview. You got to go back and watch the interview. And see, David, I believe, wanted to be a movie star, because see, you got to understand, and not to get into controversy, but I saw Van Halen in the early 80s. David Lee Roth is a performer showman.
Yep.
Not a major singer. Okay, so if you guys saw Van Halen in the early 80s, man, they're different than the album. Oh Lord, the brothers were on top of what they're playing, even how bad they were drinking. Okay, from that aspect. But the performances that Roth did, when you go see a Rush concert, you hear it note for note for the album. But you go to Van Halen's show and it's a party. Okay, it's a party atmosphere. It's not designed as the note for note album and and stuff like that, because it's a total different environment. So you got to think about this. You can't compare Sammy Hagar to Roth era. You can't. Even Gary Sharon, because there's totally different. There's a party atmosphere. And then when Hagar comes in, he comes in as a solo artist, making all these albums and stuff. And then did you guys read the interview that he talked about with his manager? They go in and they find out that Warner Brothers have been not paying the royalties on the last 84 album like they're supposed to have. And then he makes them almost $2 million on top of the new contract. His manager did. So, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that, you can say, hey, Roth was a great singer here and Hagar was a better singer here, and songwriting and all that stuff. It all comes down to publishing rights and control. And then, you know, when you have to figure out, like, say that you got a $50 million record deal and you got to produce an album. Look at Tom Schultz. Just think of this. Tom Schultz builds the first album. And he's another genius that I believe. He recorded the whole album in the basement of his house in Boston, and records the whole album. And the record company believes it's this band, and they don't realize there's one guy that did it all. He just didn't sing. He didn't sing on the album. So he has
drum machine too, wasn't it?
He actually played all the drums, the Wurlitzers, everything. He played it all. And what happened was you have to read it. There's a really good YouTube thing from Japan. They interview and they talk about, so not to get off topic, but this is how the music industry works in a way. So the record company wants to sign the band. They don't want to sign an individual because they don't think the individual wrote everything. So they go to the studio and say, look, guys, before we sign this band, I want the band to play live. I want to make sure that you can do this. And Tom talks about it. He had to go hire all these people to play on the album. So
yeah, Mad Dog just mentioned that in the chat.
Yeah,
Tom Schultz hired the band after,
and he recorded the album and everything. So he had to show them how to play to point. You know what I'm saying? When people say, "Oh, you had to show somebody how to play," that's different than you know, these people are professional musicians. You know, most people are, you know. So if I give you a song in front of you and I put a guitar in front of you and I have a guitar and I show you how I wrote the song, that's simple. Meaning, here's the chords, here's the timing, here's the chord progressions, you know, C, F minor, D, or, you know, whatever, 1-4-5 or 1-5-7, you know, all these different, you know, terminations that you know. So when you play live, you know, you just, all you're really doing is you're working on your timing mechanisms with each other for tightness of the song. So not just the playing abilities. So say go back to the, just go back right now and think about when you're in a 5150 studio and you're trying to figure out what to do in a band. Roth is gone, you know, and it's like, you know, he is the entity of the band from the forefront. So
yeah, if it wasn't for Roth, that band wouldn't have been where they were.
Exactly. And plus Roth had, you know, his family had money and everything. They had PA systems, so that really helped them jump start in the clubs and everything. So you got to understand, it's a lot about timing. It's a, you know, you can build something, but if you can't get it the right time, the people in the public will reject you or whatever. Okay. So I've always thought that. So Van Halen came at a perfect time at disco. And then, you know, the Southern California was going on really well and stuff. And then all the clubs were playing. And then Roth come along and they come out with those, you know, the first 4 albums are just unspeakable from my perspective of how they played the stuff and how they recorded it. Because you got to understand, they come off the road, never go into the studio 2 weeks later and record an album in 2 weeks and have it back out. Mm-hmm. So they were touring and then coming in and, you know, back for like 2 to 3 weeks. It's not like you think now, you know. So you know, they were working bands, you know, all these bands, think about all these bands in the 70s and 80s that toured constantly and then recorded an album and then go back on the road and you know, they would only see their families like 2 or 3 weeks a year or something. And Christmas, exactly. So so, you know, just thinking, and I always thought about this, if I was in Eddie's shoes in 1985, just think about it, 85, you don't have a band anymore. You just got 3 guys, 3 good friends. You got your brother and Michael Anthony on bass, and you're in your studio and you got all this material and you're recording it, but it's like, well, what are we going to do with it? We got to get a singer. So think about that. You know, you got Ozzy Osbourne, like Sammy talked about, you got Ozzy Osbourne, you got Ronnie James Dio, unless you go find some unknown. Back in those days, it was hard to find an unknown, though. You got to understand, you don't have the talent systems like you do nowadays. You know,
you don't have YouTube to search for
yeah, the Journey.
Check out different
Journey
bands in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like Journey.
The Journey and Judith Priest and all, you know. But just say, you got to understand, those days were totally different. And then you can, so 20 years later, 30 years later, you can reflect on it and say, well, I didn't like this, I didn't like that. But you got to understand, that's rough to opinionate because you wasn't in that environment at that time. But, you know, so you know, I thought it was a great thing that because I saw Van Halen, all these different years and stuff. And when I saw Sammy Hagar in '86, it was a whole different opening of the band because it put musicianship in front of the showmanship, in my opinion. I'm a musician, okay, so I'm a composer, write stuff all the time. So when I saw Van Halen in '86, I thought, man, Eddie's got two guitar players now. He's got Sammy, and they can unison between each other on one side of the stage and the other side of the stage. You didn't see this before, so you got to see something new than just seeing another tour with Roth, doing all these high jumps and everything, all this stuff. It was good, entertaining, but it was kind of different. So, and then the music quality came way up, in my opinion. The songwriting came up because now Eddie has a secondary composer to help him, and I saw the Wildlife when I was young, and all these different things all the solo projects that Eddie did. And, a lot of the songs on the Wildlife album turned into songs later, like,
Good Enough,
Right Now, and all Good Enough, Right Now, and all those, all this stuff. So, if you have a guitar in front of you, you're always writing, you're always writing. And you're trying, because you're under contractual agreement too. So back on the Boston deal, so they go in and record the first album, and he's already got the album recorded. He's at Polaroid working in a regular job, and then they say, we need to send the band to California. We're going to re-record the demo into the studio. So here, you got to watch this video. It's pretty neat. And then Tom goes out there for 2 weeks, and the band cannot record the album. And they're like, well, what's going on? We got the Susan producer. We got all these people. And he's like, well, you understand, Tom wrote the album. He recorded it all. And the record executives did not believe it. So he leaves and goes back to his job in Polaroid. He said, heck with this. I'm done with you people. So he takes off, and the band they can't understand. It's like, we can't break this album. We didn't do it. So finally, they go back to his studio, and he shows them how he recorded the album layer by layer in that little isolation booth cabinet area he built. And they were floored. It's like when you go to Eddie's studio, you go to Eddie's studio and you would see all the gear and stuff. Don Landy, look what Don Landy did with the technology he had then. That was analog, old mixing boards. Remember they replaced it in the 90s. Eddie pulled all that stuff out and stuff, and they replaced it all with new stuff in the late 90s. But I don't want to critique stuff, because I don't like living in 85 or 88 or 89. I mean, it's nice to see videos and then look at manual books and stuff, but you got to understand, man, it's a whole different world than we have now. And, I just wonder what will happen in the next few years, because time is catching up with people. And it's, and it's, I think I know why Sammy's reaching out, because Don Henley died. I mean, no, not Don Henley, but what's his name?
Glenn Frey.
Glenn Frey, same age. And I think it blew Sammy away, meaning one of us can go anytime. Anybody can, be gone any day. But I think he doesn't want to have the regret, but I don't want to get into political parts of that.
Sammy, I think Sammy is more of a, like, everybody that I've known that met Sammy, and just when you watch him and see interviews with him, and he just seems like such a positive, happy dude. And when he looks back at the Van Halen days when he was in it, he remembers like the good stuff, and that still, I think, rings true with him. Like, he just loves how everything was back then, and it just brings back great memories. So I think that's why he wants to reconnect with those guys, because of the good times, whereas I don't know if Eddie really, I don't know if he's as sentimental as a Sammy Hagar.
Well, here's another thing you got to understand too. When you're a celebrity and everybody comes up to you for the last 8 to 10 years asking you, why can't you get with Van Halen? Why, they keep asking him this. So think about this. Every day every
interview that he does.
But I'm saying, even when he did I went and saw the David Lee Roth and Sammy tour. And,
I saw that too.
And it was like everybody wanted to compete each other. It's like politics. Everybody wants to say this person's better than this one. It's not. It's different venues of music.
Who opened when you saw the Sam and Dave tour? Who opened?
I saw David Lee Roth opened, and they had the band. They had the band. What was the band name back in the day? I forgot. It's been so many years.
Yeah, me too.
he had the band. The band was incredible.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yes.
incredible. I will say incredible. But you know, that was a tribute band he hired,
Yes.
and he talked about it and everything. Incredible show. Roth, you got to understand, Roth is a different showman. He's a showman, singer, versus a songwriter, creator. You see what I mean? There's a difference. It's like, it's you can't compete with each other from that perspective. Now, Roth has his own. It's like somebody's voice. Why would you complain about somebody's voice compared to the other person's voice? Because that's their uniqueness self. You know what would be the saddest part of all is you would have two David Lee Roths. Meaning you would have a David Lee Roth from 84, and then you would bring in somebody who was just like David Lee Roth in 85, competing with the, you see what I mean? That would be the worst thing of all. Think about this for a minute, because then that guy would have been critiqued all his career from then on, being the David Lee Roth 2 or something. Then we got Sammy Hagar that actually came in and did albums different and sounded different in a way, you know, you got to understand it's, and then look at Gary Sharon. See, Eddie, I will tell you, I still listen to Van Halen 3 in my car all the time. And I love that album because he did some revolutionary things with a Steinberg and then Sustainer, you know, because you want every album to sound differently in a way than a repeated task, because then your artist will be bored and why would I care about recording anymore, you know? But there's a lot of things that goes into that. You know, you're under market demand. The record company keeps coming back saying, hey, I want a delivery in 6 weeks, no matter what, or we're going to sue you. We're going to put a class action lawsuit against you. You won't be able to play music. You won't be able to play live, or, you know, that's how it works. And it's like, what do? You know, so, you know, in my opinion, I grew up in both eras, and, you know, my voice, it's just my opinion, meaning it's totally different Van Halen's to me. And,
Yep.
I would love to see, I'll tell you what I would love to see, you know, like everybody else talks about, I would love to see both at a stadium concert, pull like a U2 deal and put stadiums out there all across the country. And let's see 2 versions of Van Halen. I would like to see the Roth era play for like 2 hours, take an hour break, and then what I would do is I would have like a opening act go between them, so the guys can rest and everything, and then you would come back and you would have the Hagar version. So you'd have the Van Halen brothers and everybody to be able to rest some. So then you would be able to see 2 versions of the band in 2 eras. It's not these bands are not the same eras. They're 2 different eras of bands in time. So it'd be nice to see both of them. See, there's a lot of people younger.
I'd love to see it too, but we've talked about this on the show countless times now, and I can't see Roth agreeing to do something like that.
No,
that's my opinion.
And I still believe there's, you know, it's all about money. You know, in a way, you gotta understand it's a lot about money.
It always is.
I'll tell you, you know, I'm a Van Halen fan and I'm a Led Zeppelin fan. I'll tell you what I want to see more than anything. I would love to see Led Zeppelin get back together with the original members and with John Bonham's son, Jason Bonham, and because Sammy talked about this. You know, Sammy's made comments about, hey, I'll sing in Led Zeppelin if the guys will agree upon it, you know, because he's talking about that. But the thing of it is, think about this, you know, if you got Led Zeppelin to play one season, or one tour, like for a year, it would sell out everywhere, because you got generations that never got to see them live. You see?
Yeah, and you had a real chance there like 11 years ago when they did the London O2 show. Like there was a real chance there. I don't know why. They must have been offered a truckload of money to do like a 40-date tour.
I think a lot of bands are afraid of ruining their legacy. Like if they come back and they suck or something, you know, it's like, man, we just, you know, but
yeah, but that was a great show.
I know. I want to stay on here all night because I always do, but it's 3 o'clock. I got to split.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'll let you guys go. But David, it was awesome meeting you.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking soon again. I'm sure.
We'll do a whole interview on the Steinberg Trans Tremolo when I have one in front of me, and then we'll go through it and I'll give you details just like I did the FRT5 Floyd Rose. And then also, I don't know if we'll have time tonight, but I'll tour Make Nashville here, and I'll show you all the CNC machines, the Bridgeport end mills, everything I'm doing here. and I will be here tomorrow doing 3D printings of some of the, the string lock nut for the string retainer for the 5150. You remember we had all those conversations months ago?
Yeah.
I got the latest file a month ago, and I've got to print it tomorrow. I just haven't had time, before they make the steel ones. The guy in Brazil that's making them for Chris Hubbard, I think. I have to go back and read the comments, but I want to get some of those because, see, I'm trying to build the most unique fit. I want to build the most accurate 5150 ever. You sort of mean? I'm down to the. I want to. And I talked about this earlier. I've been studying for the last 5 years nanotechnology of wood fibers and wood molecules.
I gotta go.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about it later. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Good night. Sorry.
Yeah.
See you, Jay.
Not to get it off topic, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to get on a rant about the Van Halen versions, but there's just two eras. You can't compete each other. There's no way. I mean, it's like a Ferrari versus a Lamborghini. They're two different cars. You can't compete them. You can't compare both of them together. There's no way. They're different. And thank goodness.
They're both cool, though.
Yeah, they're both cool.
Individually, They're both cool.
Yeah, exactly. And look at Gary Cherone. I've always thought about that. He came from Extreme. He had the same, Van Halen and Extreme had the same management at the time. And I think they thought, hey, this is the perfect fit because, he would be perfect for the band. And, you say, okay, so he recorded an album. And I just think, I wished I could have heard one more album with Cherone. I think it would have been really cool, in my opinion, or three of them because, and I always wanted.
Yeah, they had recorded a bunch of songs. The second one was almost ready to go. Yeah. Yeah, and it just overall for me, David, it's just sad. Like 20 years now, you had Van Halen 3 in like 98, and then Different Kind of Truth. It's been 20 years, and all we've got from Eddie is basically those two records, right?
Well, I'm not going to start another controversy, but here's the thing about the Different Kind of Truth. A lot of those are the album demos from 85 and 84. A lot of those stuff. Like Ripley, because I was a huge Ripley guy because, I said, hey, I told Steve one time, hey, Steve, what do you like when Eddie writes a song for you? And he laughs, he's really cool. He's like, well, it was cool. I wish he would have recorded and released it, the real Ripley song. You remember when he used the
instrumental
Ripley? Yeah. He used the stereo Ripley guitar. It was really cool. See, here's the thing about Edward too. Edward does a lot of inventive things when he's in the studio. And, look what he did. He used the Steinberg Trench tremolo. He's used the Kramer Ripley. He's done some different cool things over the years. And then he's always trying to reinvent the guitar in a lot of ways. And thank God we had somebody like that because, nowadays we don't really see music or hear music like we heard before. You don't. It's discouraging as a musician, and there's a limited amount of time in the next 20 years, is what I'm saying, so who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, and I would love to see more things, but, life has changed so much for everybody, and priorities change, I would love to see some more stuff happen, but, I just don't know if it will materialize because, not just money, but attitudes change and different things happen. I'll tell you what, when I was growing up and when Roth left in 85, I thought there would be no more Van Halen ever. Okay. I will tell you, because I saw breaking news one day on MTV in 85. It said David Lee Roth has left Van Halen. They you know how it is. They had a squabble, said he was fired, he left and all that stuff. So then I thought, oh Lord. So I guess that means Edward and Alex will do something different because they own the Van Halen entity name, but the band won't exist anymore. That's what I thought at first, that's what everybody thought.
Yeah. What do you think about if Sammy hadn't have made the call and gone to the studio? Do you think they would have done some kind of all-star record?
I think, well, that's a good question. Everybody can speculate, but I just think with Eddie's, because Eddie wrote all the music, think about this. Alex just played drums, you know, how it really is, you know. So think about this. Eddie would get in the studio, and I think he was doing some stuff with Brian May and stuff, you know. I just wonder what would have materialized, because, you know, what would happen is Eddie would have been in the studio for months, and then Warner Brothers would say, look, you know, we got to have an album. We have to have a delivery, or you're going to break your contract, and you're going to owe like 8, 12, $15 million. So what are you going to do? So, you know, you got to look at it from his avenue. Think about it. You know, everybody wants to critique everything about everything, but, you know, when you're in that environment, you have to think differently, you know, and that's what I feel like, because, you know, it's, business was different then too. You know, they get paid a lot of different royalty rates and stuff. They have performance rates and you know, there's like 4 different royalty rates, really. You have a performance royalty rate, you have a publishing rights, a songwriter rights, and then you have entity rights off your music. Like if it's used in music, I mean, in movies or TV shows, you get different percentages that way. That's how the ASCAP and BMI stuff works. But what I was going to tell you is, in my opinion, you know, well, we don't know. What I'm saying is we don't know. We wouldn't know really until, you know, something happened. But in those days, I thought, Lord, you know, the Van Halen was massive then. You got to understand, man. MTV was the huge populace, you know, because I got MTV in '81, and when it first came out, and then I was one of the first persons to get Def Leppard Pyromania tour. You know, I mean, High and Dry album. You remember Def Leppard High and Dry? I went to the music store and asked them for it, and they said, we don't have it. It's going to take 2 weeks to order it, and we don't even know what a Def Leppard is, you know. So, and this is in '81, so you just think about that stuff, you know. And then, you know, but think about, you know, they could have got somebody. Maybe I was just thinking about this the other day. I was listening to Foreigner, because I listen to all different genres of music. I don't just listen to Van Halen. I listen from classical all the way to bluegrass, and I play bluegrass and all these different, you know, songs and all the different things, bluegrass, country, and everything. So just think about this. What if, I was thinking about this when I was listening to Foreigner, what if Lou Gramm joined Van Halen? Think about this for a minute. You know, Lou Gramm, he was a huge songwriter. So here's the thing. Who was on Warner Brothers label in '85? Okay. I would have to pull back, you know, all the information, you know, just think about this. So the quick part, you know, what Eddie would have done, he said, look, I'm going to go get this lady in this band called Scandal that I've been out on tour with, named Patty Smythe, you know, and I'm going to put her in my band. And then, you know, they'd be like, oh, well, Van Halen is going to put a female vocalist on. You know how it is, you know, and they'd be like, next thing you know, all the controversy happens and people will be complaining about it. So just think about Eddie's shoes. You know, you got to deliver something in 6 to 8 weeks or 12 weeks. And then what do? You know, and then I think what happened is, you know, I think Warner Brothers probably called Eddie and said, look, you got so many days, you know, and he's like, well, you know, and then, so, you know how it is. The guy from Claudio recommended you just talk to Sammy, you know, and stuff like that. And it was really good timing in a way. You think about this, you know, Sammy gets off tour, he talks about it in the book, and then he gets over and he goes down and he drives down from San Francisco and drives down to 5150 studio. He's like, I never really met these guys before. I go in and these guys been up for like 27 hours straight. Think about this, walking into a studio with these guys 26, 27 hours, no sleep. So that shows you the pressure they're under. Think about this for a minute. They got an album and they got these songs, but they don't know what to do with it. So they got to deliver, say, 6 to 8 weeks, and they're at 26, 27 hours, and they got to deliver an album. You know, they're stressing like crazy. And then Sammy comes in like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he starts singing all the stuff with them. You know what's going to happen? It's like, oh my God, we got the new singer.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, I'm a solo artist, you know, and all that stuff. And then, you know, when you read the books and stuff, it kind of correlates together, because we never knew all this stuff when it was going live until you read stuff later, 25, 30 years later. And then you read Noel Monk's book. You know, I read all the different books and everything. And then it's great reads. Okay. But you get to see the life behind the scenes
Yeah, especially the Michael Anthony stuff. The Michael Anthony stuff surprised me. Like early '84, he was already getting cut out of stuff.
Yeah,
like that surprised me.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it reset in '85. So that's a key constraint information there also, because what happened was you know, in '84 he loses his rights really all the way down to, what was it, 5% or something.
yeah,
Still a lot of money, but I'm saying in '84 that album sold like crazy. And you know, I like that comment and the book that Noel goes up to Alex in early '84, and Alex is mad. I mean, livid mad, because Michael Jackson's album is #1, and my brother recorded on that album and not got a penny out of it. You know how it is, you know, the Beat It,
yeah,
Beat It song with Michael Jackson Thriller album, and they're competing with that all year. But see, think about this for a minute too. In 1984, look what happened in '84. Look at the music scene then. You know, it was like a perfect avenue of everything coming together
yeah.
for all the different bands, you know, because
Sunset Strip.
yeah, and you know, look at all the bands in '84 and MTV and everything, and it's a different culture then. And then, you know, you had Back to the Future come out in '84. A lot of things happened in '84. You know,
Yeah,
think about all the movies that come out that year and all the music that came out that year. It was like an explosion. Everything like collided together in '84, and then '85 really, you know, changed a little bit, and then, you know, then Van Halen changed singers and stuff like that. But '84 was a huge year for everything,
yeah,
movies, TV shows, and all the. If you have to go back to that year and start looking at stuff, but I've always thought, if I was in Eddie's shoes in 1985, I'm in my studio, I've got my guitar, you know, you're a huge celebrity. Think about it, you're a very huge celebrity. You know, you're really wealthy in a way, uh, and it's your band, really. You know, it's really his band. You know, because, you know, his brother, you know, plays drums on it and everything, but it's really his band. And then what do you do when he's gone, when Roth is gone? Because I still believe Roth believed he was the band. You see what I mean? And then he had a big, huge. When Hagar came in and recorded that album, I really think it really threw Warner Brothers, and because Warner Brothers was with both singers. Think about this, you know, both bands. They had Roth on his solo movie deal he was talking about, and then he made that album Eat 'Em and Smile, which is an incredible album. Oh God, incredible, because, you know, you got some major talent there. And then Van Halen came out with Hagar, and you know, it's all these camps. You know, I camp here and this camp here, and who's better and all that stuff. And it's not about better; it's about what does the public represent the most, or what are they most happy with? You know, it's
yeah,
a popularity contest. So you guys are musicians too. Think about this. You know, it's not about being popular from a popularity contest. It's about you being creative as a songwriter and your fulfillment. So I write all the time. I'm at work. Sometimes I'll write stuff on notepads. I'm sitting there writing stuff down. I get this stuff flows, you know, and start writing. I get home and I get a guitar out and I'll start writing stuff and then put it on. I've got a Roland transducer on one of my guitars, and I write all the music up on the guitar on the computer. I mean, so I write all the time. But the thing of it is like, it may not be good to me, but you might like it, or you might not like it, but I love it. You see what I mean? So you know how it is. It's like um, it's a persona of the public in that way, and we've changed so much over the years. From all our aspects, you know, we got to see Van Halen, all these different creations, 3 different creations really. And then the 04 tour was amazing in my opinion, you know, to see them all back together. And then you watch, they never came to Nashville, and I never got to see them live, but I saw the videos and stuff.
yeah.
But now, after seeing the videos, I don't know. You know, I want to stay out of that one. It's like Hagar talked about it, but you know, that was a rough tour. You know, think about it. You know, you see somebody that you idolized all your life, and you see somebody in a different perspective than you thought.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, David Allen, you got a question here from our friend the Vigilant. He says, "Hey, David Allen, Wright, Floyd question. Do you know if the PV style Floyd from GFS is any good, or is the Gato trim a better replacement to a FR Special?
Okay, so the Music Man Tremolo, the first ones, I was at the Music Man, when I go to all the NAMM shows all the time, I would go meet all these people and I would talk to them, you know, I'm the geek, so I would go ask them questions. Okay, so let me talk to you about the Music Man. The Music Man Tremolo was a special tremolo that they built offset saddles for. So the original Music Man EVH models had an offset saddle. They used them on different models because they told me at the time they destroyed the castings for it, but I don't think they ever did, because I saw those years later. Okay, long story short, the PV tremolo I think was a great tremolo. It's thicker than the original Floyd Rose. It, you know, you see how thick the PV version is.
Yeah.
It's a different version. It set the needs for what the PV had, because it's, so you got to understand there's a couple of variables there. The Music Man was a flat top guitar. It's a 3/4 or 7/8 guitar. You know, it's littler. Okay, so when he goes to PV, they have to design a whole new guitar, and then they're going to build an arch top. First arch tops ever. So they wanted to build a tremolo that compensates the arch top with a thicker base plate. So it's all about, it's not just one answer, meaning you have to consider the arch top, you have to consider the thickness of the tremolo, and then sustaining and stuff. So Jim DeCola can talk to you about that some too, from the aspect of what he had to go through for that guitar to be built and designed. Really interesting parts, but I've got all the different ones. I love the Music Mans, but you got to understand, it's just like every car. Every car is different. You know, you may have a Ferrari, and then you may have a Lamborghini, or you may have a Pinto. So all three of them will get you to A to B, but you may have to fight the Pinto twice as much than you can for a Ferrari or a Corvette or something. That's how I think of analogies of guitars to me, because I have about 95 guitars at home, and I will tell you, or maybe 97 or something like it. And a lot of them are gun safes and stuff, protected from fire and all that stuff. And I don't get to play them much, but I'm saying some guitars are very troublesome. You pick it up and you play it, and it goes out of tune, and then it's like, dang, and then you get another one, and it's been stretched out, and strings are stretched out and everything. So you play it for 2 hours, and it doesn't go out of tune. But then you go, and it's like, why is this other one giving me issues? And it could be a tension rate, it could be a tension on the neck, it could be a compensation problem or string issues or whatever. But what I'm saying is it could change your variables fairly quickly. So when you it's hard to compete. It's hard to compare them, but the tremolos are different from each one. Each one of them fit its purpose, is what I want to say from that. But every tremolo, there's not a perfect tremolo out there. I will tell you, unless you think about a trance tremolo, but the trance tremolo has its limitations to a certain extent. Like if you want an Ibanez gem that you want to pull backwards, you want to go back and pull a 1 1/3 scale span, you have to pull it backwards, where you have to have it full floating all the way. And see, each one is designed for each specifications, all I can say. And it's a tricky question to answer, but it's designed that way. But now, if you guys want to talk details about metal, and because I can go into a lot of detailed specifications of metals and how the tremolos were made for each part, we can do that. But that's a long, detailed question and answer.
I guess my other question to you about just NAMM this year, David, is other than like the Malcolm Young guitar that you saw, was there anything else specifically at one of the booths that grabbed your attention? It doesn't have to be a guitar, or an amp, or a pedal, anything that you saw?
I like the Kiesel stuff. The Kiesel stuff, man. He's making some really cool stuff. So what I did at NAMM, I went Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and Saturday was the last day. But when I go to these booths, I have to talk to people, and I'm talking to people for like 30 to 45 minutes sometimes. So it takes me 4 hours to go down 2 rows in NAMM. How big it is to that. So what I'm saying is so what I was doing is walking around and hitting, like, there's a couple of companies that do tools and stuff like that. I've known these people for years. So when I walking through the hallways, the people hit me up and say, hey, I wanted you to look at this or that. And, you get all these connections all the time with people. So I was talking to different tool manufacturers and some other people doing stuff. And I told them, hey, I need you to build me this. And like, well, give me 6 weeks and we'll build it for you. So I get a lot of stuff that I want to get done and stuff. It's really cool. But, the show this year, I got to meet that guy. I've got all these information. I posted it online about the transport tremolo. It's just like a Steinberg tremolo. It does cam. It's a cam mechanism, and we can go into that later because he's going to send me one. They're $450 a piece.
All right.
And I was floored on the price. I thought they were going to be $1,000 to $1,500, and it's really cool. And so here's what my plan is, guys. And I'll give you feedback in about 6 weeks. When I get the new CNC machine, I'm going to get a body, and I'm going to mount that tremolo on that body and do some tryouts with it because it's going to be a cam. He's going to send it to me. It's a cam mechanism, and you can transpose, and I'm going to put it on a Strat to test it out and prototype it. I think this is going to be a cool adventure because now we're going to be able to have a guitar that has a transposing mechanism, almost like a tremolo, but less complicated, so that it does all the string compensations from 9 to 46 or 10 to 48 or 10 to 52 and stuff like that. So I was talking about the string rates and the string response times. And he's giving me, because I was asking him mathematical formulas, and he was like, oh, Lord, I can't go into this today. But he says, I know what you're talking about. So, I'm a very technical person, I guess. So when I start talking to people, I need to know specs and stuff, and then I'll start giving you reports. I'll send you reports and say, hey, this is my, string tension between A string or D string or F string or E string, and it would give us specifications of length versus string tensions versus spring tension, and then I would give you all the compensation rates. All right. So long story short, I'm looking at that tremolo, and then when I get the CNC machine, I'm going to do a body, and I'm going to build it and put a neck on it, and then we'll run through it. Because I like doing a lot of skunk work stuff that people hadn't done or they can't figure out. Like the D2H, I'm working on that at the moment. That's on the back burner. I got to do some 3D printing. I'm here at Make tonight. I would show you the 3D printer machines we have back here. We have actually 3D printer machines back here that I'm going to be using to make parts, because I have to build 3D parts before I can send it to manufacturing, because I have to work out all the specifications for size and distance and make sure that parts interchange with each other. You can build something in CAD, but if CAD doesn't fit, you have to make a material product. And then when you make a material product, you got to make sure it lines up, and it's like, I will do some more tomorrow afternoon. I'll be back at Make Nashville tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to do some 3D printing, and I can actually probably do a live video of the D2H to show you guys what I have to go through. And it's mind boggling. It's like, well, you got to shave it down 24 thousandths of us, or 18 thousandths or something to make it fit. And then each string has to line up like on a guitar. When you get a guitar and you look at it, it's already been worked out. But I'm saying when you build a new bridge, you got to make sure all the strings are spaced the equal amount for the 25.5 scale, or or whatever the scales you're working with. It's really interesting from that. But there's so many projects I'm working on over the years, and it started with seeing the 5150 the first time in the early 80s, and then the Frankenstrat guitars, and then all the guitars Eddie used over the years on tour and stuff. I saw the 84 guitar, and then with a bass string on it, and 85 and stuff. 84 tour was really cool to see. But see, back in those days, we didn't have the technology we have now for cameras and stuff. It would have been really cool to go back in time with a GoPro camera and take all the pictures and videos of the 84 tour. It would have been amazing. Think about that. You could see all the stuff forward and timelines, and it would have been neat. I just wonder, this is what I've been thinking too. I wonder what's out there in the vaults that they haven't found yet from the 84 tour, 86 tour. You know, they might find something 30 years from now, you know. Hey, 79 78, 79 tour when they had the Bumblebee. You know, there's video out there of him playing that guitar a lot.
Yep.
What happens if they find a book next year, or or they found a book last month or whatever, or at the same time they found a book of all the 79 stuff. Now they got 1 year to come out with it, or 6.5 months for Anaheim. Think about that for a minute. So if you're in the place of somebody building these guitars and you got 6 months to build a black and yellow Bumblebee, and you have to build it, and you got to build it to 100% specs, you know, so then you don't have the guitar anymore. Think about this one for a minute. It's buried. Okay. It's 6 feet down in the dirt. Okay. So what are you going to do? You're going to use pictures, and then so usually how this works is you have to build something before you send it to Eddie. So you can't just go to Eddie and ask him all these questions. You have to build something, then he's going to say yes or no. You know,
so David, in your mind, like these 78s that just came out, like how long ago do you think that the project would have started? Like 2 years ago?
I think about
3?
Well, I was thinking, and just my thought, this is my opinion, is 12 to 14 months ago. Because
really?
you have to go through, you have to go through a lot of legal stuff. I don't think it was that long, because, you know, unless they were sourcing the oil cans for that long. But I'm just saying, okay, so really technically, it's kind of an easy project in one way, because you got the Strat body and the Strat headstock. You don't have to go through all that stuff. Just think about this. If you had to do a banana headstock, that's going to be years. Think about it, because see, it's copyright, like the Kramer behind you, those banana headstocks, you know, hockey stock. They had like 5 different versions of the hockey stick necks anyway. They had the original ones from 83 ESP and Duck Sports made them back in those days. And then you have the newer Kramer banana headstocks, like the Kramer Ripley's that were non-tilted and all that stuff. And then you had the newer versions, the pointy side and everything. So then you have the Jackson version, and then you had the Hamer version, you know. So think about this. If you're somebody building these things, you cannot, everybody wants to say, hey, why can't you build a real 5150?
Yeah.
Well, it's more complicated than you think it is. It's not the complication of building it. It's the complication of what you can do legally.
Yeah. Yeah. The headstock.
The headstock and everything, and the paint schemes. Now, you know, when I was growing up, Eddie never wanted his guitars ever to be copied, ever. I mean, I remember all the interviews. It's like, well, he sued all these companies. You remember there was a company called Memphis. There was a guitar company called Memphis back in the day, and they were making all those little guitars, and they got sued in federal court. I remember this when I was a kid. I was reading about it. Eddie Van Halen sues in federal court, class action injunction against Memphis Guitar Company. I thought Memphis was in Memphis, Tennessee. How stupid was I? You know, it was a Japanese company, you know, with Memphis name on it. But I'm just saying, you can find these in pawn shops every now and then, and they're very collectible now. So just think about this. You know, Eddie was fighting up all these people, and it almost goes back to the black and yellow guitar, in my opinion, because, you know, if he had the endorsement deals locked down and stuff, and Charvel was building the guitars by his conditions and how his approval was signed off, I think we would have had a production model. But, you know, that fell through. And I don't know if you guys met Dennis from Kramer. What's his last name?
Berardi?
Yeah. I saw him at NAMM show years and years and years ago, back in the 90s. So I asked him a question. I was like, hey, is it really true that you met Eddie Van Halen on the airplane? He's like, yep. He was in first class and I was in coach, and he said I was going. Somehow he found out Eddie was on the plane, so he goes up there and he tries to make a deal for the Kramer, you know, because they wanted to sign Eddie to an exclusive deal, you see. And I heard the story about all that, you know, from him. And it was an oral conversation, not written or anything, but he told me the story. You know, he was trying to get Eddie to, because everybody was after Eddie trying to get a guitar deal. You know, you had Gibson, you had Fender, and a few other companies, but not like you have now. And the technology is so much different now than it was then. But he told me a story one time, and it's really cool when I heard it and stuff, you know, but I didn't document it at the time. But he was at the Kramer convention, and he talked about this one time. It may be a recording out there somewhere. We may have to find somebody. Dino may have it, or somebody. There's a recording of him talking about how he got Eddie to do the endorsement deal.
Huh.
And it was between tours and stuff, and then him and Valerie were going from New York or somewhere, or he was going from LA to New York or something. There was a detail about that, and then it was a cross country flight, and he kept going up there and harassing Eddie apparently, and you got to understand, Eddie was on the plane. He's like, man, I wish people would leave me alone. You know how it is. From the aspect of being on a plane. And then, he's trying to make a deal. He's trying to make an endorsement deal and stuff. And then they finally made endorsement deal with stock options and stuff in the company is what I was told. It was more than just paying somebody to play a guitar. He actually got a percentage of the company at the time, which nobody knew. Nobody knew what a Kramer was, except the aluminum necks. You remember, you guys know, we all know that now. We know the aluminum necks and everything. But they never had you think about that. That was like signing Michael Jackson to Pepsi or something. That's a huge deal in the guitar world. Signing Eddie Van Halen to an exclusive deal to play a guitar live. And then you saw some of the purple guitars with a tape over the headstock and stuff. And there's a reason behind all that because, of endorsements and stuff like that. So, it's, and plus, when you want to make money in all the parts of the business you can, not just record and performance and royalties and everything. You want to make the most money you can, like anybody else. So if I sign Johnny Beane to a $7.5 million record deal, and plus he makes a $2.5 million guitar deal for the next 5 years playing his guitars with my name on them, you see, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, heck no? Or you're going to say, hey, where do I sign? And can I build my own units or guitars and stuff, So, stuff like that. So, and, these guys are, there's a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes that I guess people don't realize, when you sign record deals, and then, you have handlers that help you and stuff. And then everybody wants a piece of you every time you're on that show and tour and stuff. And then, it gets bombarding after so long. And then, we got to see him play the Kramer guitars. It was really cool. I never saw a striped up guitar. The 5150 scheme is really cool.
Yeah.
I thought, from the telemetry of the body and stuff, it's really cool.
Just that one spot that's sort of spider webby looking.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's where everybody's eyes go, right there.
Exactly. And to me, and my brain works my brain works a little bit differently. When I see the stripe lines, I look at trigonometry and geometry. I don't know if you guys do. I do. I look at it from point A to point B to point C to point D, like a star map. In front of you. So you look at the lines, and I'm sitting there looking at the positions of geometry and trigonometry of the angles, like a pyramid here, star, half angle here, pyramid here, stuff like that. So I look at it that way, and it makes my mind think differently. And this would be a cool, interesting question to ask Eddie sometimes. Say, hey, when you look at the schemes of each one of the guitars, what do you see? Honestly, what, he might come up with some elaborate answer that we'd have no idea over, be like, I see certain, the 5150 body guitar, I see certain aspects against the Frankenstrat body and stuff like that, ones. And look at the elaborate details that they went into with a black and yellow guitar, whoever striped that one up did a lot of work. That's a lot of different integrity work that had to go on with that, and you think, if I give you the guitar in front of you, could you do that? So here's what I think all the time. If I was the person doing it at the time it done, could I do it? Could you do the 5150 the way it's now at the time then? If I give you the body and I give you 10 hours to do it, could you do it? Meaning you never saw it before. Could you create it? Think about that.
David Allen, I just did my first Kramer 5150 build, and I had like 1986. I was a 5150 guy, and I had the 4-page pullout from Guitar for the Practicing Musician. I've had it on my wall for 32 years, and I just did my first Kramer 5150. Yep. So it was out of my spectrum back then. Not till I met Johnny Beane, and then knowing Dave Desdahl and Rob Johnson, then I went, you know what? If I want one, I'll get the body and the neck from Musicraft, and I'm doing it, and I did. Yeah.
We all did, you know, and then you're pulling your hair out. It's like, well, I missed this stripe by 0.25 millimeters. Now I'm gonna have to redo it again. You know how it is. And for me it is, you know, and it's like I'm so discouraged. You get down on yourself, it's like, well, I want to do another one, I want to do another one, I want to do another one. That's how you get good at something, you know, from that perspective. It's really, you know, we all have a Van Halen. We want to build the perfect replica, and we keep striving for that. And it's good in a lot of ways. It's healthy from a lot of ways and unhealthy for others in a way. Meaning from that, because you know, if you spend, you know, I know somebody that stripes these guitars up and paints them, and he told me he spent 100 hours just on the body. Think about this, 100 hours to do it. That's relicking and everything, super gluing, all the stuff. And and he has the patience that I don't have anymore. I can't do it no more. When I was younger, I could be able to paint these guitars and do them and stuff. I just don't have time anymore. I've got so many other projects on my plate. So I would pay the person to do the expert level to his level and let him do it.
Right.
And then, because for me to do it, it would cost me 3 times as long in time and money. But if you buy a body and a neck and you build it and you paint it, that's the most creative way you can do it. You see what I mean? For you.
Yeah.
At the point now, I just don't have time anymore like I used to. It's like I'm working on all these other endeavors that I'm doing, you know, and because my mind focuses on different things and CAD designs and stuff like that now. But so here's a question I asked somebody at Fender yesterday. I said, hey, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought that, okay, so it goes back to the white and black Van Halen guitar from the 2015 tour with all the lines in it.
Yeah.
You remember? So I asked the person, I said, could you use a machine, a CNC machine with a needle on it, and you compensate the curves of the arch top? He said, we tried to do this and everything, and it was going to take like 400 hours. I said, okay, so let me do this. What if you take a paint gun, airbrush gun, and you have 2 airbrushes in front of you, and you set one on the XYZ coordinates and another one on XYZ coordinates, and you would paint them to the mapping of the paint schema of a 5150.
Oh, right.
See what I mean? Then what you're doing is you're doing production of a paint schema. Okay, it can be done, but you have to program all that. You have to scan it, program it. Tim Lennox talked about he relicked the 5150 off of CAD Designs, and he spent a lot of hours doing it. I posted it on Facebook a while back, and you could do it. You could relic that. So here's another thing you can do, and here's what Fender's been talking about doing, like car wrappings. You know, these wrappings that you put on you print it out and then you wrap it. I think somebody did a wrapping a while back for a guitar. You remember somebody did it on Facebook, and then and I thought, oh my God, they actually made it work. But then they turned around and ripped it apart and did it, you know, painted it. Okay. But I wonder, see, here's a thing that's coming into realm in the next few years is 3D painting will be coming into play. 3D painting will be a CNC machine that you put the chemicals in, and you will be able to paint any any position XYZ coordinates.
Right.
But you won't have Z really, because Z is depth. Okay, so you just paint Y and X and Y, vertical and horizontal, so you can paint it. So what will happen is you'll be able to mix the blending controls of the paint, so that you want orange here and you want yellow here. You'll blend it automatically. That's coming. And I've been thinking about how to design that, because then you could be able to do production relicking. So here's the other question. We'll have to go into a later topic. And I've been researching this for 5 years. I've been researching nanotechnology of wood. Okay, so Stradivarius violins from the 1600s, they can't recreate them. Okay, they can't. They never have created them over 400, almost 450 years.
Oh, the violins, yeah.
The violins, because he did stuff in the material of the wood in the 1600s that nobody else did, and nobody can recreate it. They've been studying this. The universities have been studying it for hundreds of years. They've been trying to figure out the varnishes, everything. So say that we find out, say that you get the 5150 body in front of you, the original guitar. The original guitar is in front of you. So how would you go and figure out the molecular structure of the wood? So how you would do it? So there's the first way you would do it is use sonar technology, and you would scan the body from top to bottom using sonar to go into the wood of the molecules of the wood. Because see, it has density characteristics different than what you have now.
It's like a MRI X-ray almost, yeah.
Yeah, almost like an X-ray, almost like a CAT scan. Let's think of so I was talking to medical people a few years ago that I worked with, and I was asking them CAT scans and all that stuff. And so if I want to do 3D top 3D imagery of wood, how would I do it? And they were talking about how the sonar technologies work, and then it would penetrate into it, and then you would be able to go down, and then you have to blow up the body thickness and the depth, and you're going down to the molecular structure of the DNA of the wood. That goes down to your nucleus and your atoms, and you're splitting your, almost like splitting atoms in a way where you have a nuclear bomb. But I'm just saying, what you do is you go down to that molecular structure, and then you will be able to really recreate a 5150 1982. It was built in 82 because I saw pictures of the US Festival. You saw those, right? And you saw the 5150 in the background, and he was backstage. So it was built in 82. Somewhere right. What was the weekend? 80 Memorial Day 82.
Yeah, I got a cover of a magazine. I can find it here, David. Just give me a sec.
Sure.
83.
I'm sorry, 83. So it was 83 he built it. They had it built, and he was in the. So I remember the US Festival because see, Eddie was complaining about it. It's like, I don't want to do this show because I'm recording my album right now, the new 84 album. And I remember all the controversy about that. And he's like, I don't want to do it. And then Alex said, look, we need the money and stuff. And then they had a bidding war. Was it David Bowie or somebody? I can't remember. There was a bidding war going on at the time between Van Halen and some other artists, and we want $1 million, and then it was like $1,000,001 and all that stuff. You remember those? I remember all that stuff back in the day. But then Eddie was reluctantly, he didn't want to do that show, and because he was in the middle of the 84 album, and they had to release that album. And they had 2 delays. I read about this in one of the magazines. They talked about they had 2 delays, and they finally released the album. I remember Jump come out New Year's Eve on MTV that night, and and then they released the album. But it was in 83. I'm sorry, 83. I remember backstage at the US Festival, you saw the 5150 in the background. It was really cool.
Yeah. There's this shot here, David. I don't know at what point, what year or month this is, but there's no stickers or decals on the 5150. Stickers aren't there. Yeah.
So there's a picture of him backstage and warming up at the US Festival, and he's got the Frankenstrat with the beak stock headstock on it, the beak neck on it, and everything. And in the background, in the distance, because we were talking about this a couple of months ago, how far that. We were actually asking how many feet distance between David Lee Roth's foot versus the distance of the guitar versus the Frankenstrat in front of us. You remember that? There's a big controversy about that. It's like, well, if David Lee Roth's foot is 11 inches of diameter, I remember this, and it's like, oh my God, guys, we can't go into this yet because we just saw the 5150 in the the first picture I ever saw, you know, because he kept it in the studio when he was recording an album, you know, and stuff. And it's probably the first time that he ever unearthed it, but it was always backstage. He never used it. Or if he did use it, nobody saw it on video coverage or anything. So, you know, so we really got to see it in '84 when the album was completed, and then they were doing all the press demos and all that stuff. And, you know, I don't remember early '84 they going to the 5150 studio and doing a big interview. I think the band just went out and done publicity stuff, and then they started to tour, I think in February, didn't they start to tour in February, I think in '84, the first leg. I'll have to look again. So those first shows were the ones that didn't have the space tape on them. And then I heard a story at NAMM that, you know, he was at a truck stop one night and he found the numbers, and they were numbers for the back of the trailers on the trucks, and he picked them out and he started putting them on there. And then apparently he was on the bus and he got them crooked and all, you know, that's what I heard. So they had to source it. It took them almost a year to source those. They had to find the manufacturer, and the manufacturer went out of business, is what I was told. So they had to go back and find the source material for that, you know. So just think about, you know, that. So say that you're a research assistant at Fender and your job all day long for the next 6 months is to find the material for the sticker that you, or this 5150 numbers and the prism, and you're trying to source it. So you know that's going to be frustrating as can be. You know, you think it's a dream job, but think about it. You're under pressure. You got to figure out, hey, where can I find these numbers and who's the manufacturer, all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, here's a live shot with, there's no stickers on it yet.
Yeah.
Early on the '84 tour. Yeah.
Yep. And man, I loved Alex's drum kit back in those days. You know, he had those clear octagon, what do they call those? Tama used to make them too. The toms, and I loved his '85 kit because it was clear acrylic. You know, the acrylic kit. I loved that kit too. That was awesome. But I always liked Alex's drum kits over the years too, being a drummer and everything. But that was a cool picture, you know. So that you see, you know, you got to understand, guys. It's 2:52 a.m. for me, and we're talking about stuff that's happened 38 to 39 years ago, 36 years ago. You know, think about this. So we're looking at pictures like when we were kids. You would stare at a picture of them live in concert, and you'd be like, man, you know, what's going through Eddie's mind right now? You know, he's on stage, you know, he's playing, he's got to, you know, he's probably in the middle of a song at the moment when you take that picture, but what is his thought process? Is his thought process of what we're going to do after this show, or is the tour going to be successful? You know, think about this. He's on tour and the album just come out, and you got to see what the public persona is on this, you know. And, you know, they come off the Diver Down tour, and that was not a successful album. So in '84, he does this album. You know, he's worked his butt off in the studio, and it releases, and it's in, you know, it's massive. Okay. And then you have, I remember this, you guys remember the diehard Van Halen fans thought '84 was a complete sellout because they said, oh my God, the album is not like the old hardcore albums, you know. But, you know, Eddie used keyboards. He done some cutting edge technologies and stuff. And then he done like I'll Wait was a great one with the guitar solos he did and the keyboard rhythms and stuff that he did. And also, by the way, I was posting the other day that, you know, there's a keyboard that Eddie used. It's the XAB? No, OXA, right? You know, the Obrium keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
That keyboard has never been reproduced. There's a company in Germany that's trying to reproduce that keyboard now, because we talked about that the other day. Why hasn't nobody come out with a keyboard that had all the Van Halen songs, like an official release keyboard? Think about that. You know, it'd be cool.
Yeah, we've said that on here. Why don't they come out with like an EVH bass, like the Wolfgang one, the blue with black and white stripes, and then like Eddie EVH bring out a keyboard. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Fender was in partnership with Korg for years. And I don't know if there still are, because I used to see Roland and, you know, Roland and Fender used to have exclusive deals together, and Korg. So Roland can come out with a keyboard and a heartbeat, or just say one of them. They would do a license agreement, and then because see that Obium keyboard was used on all the old Rush albums, the Yes albums, the Van Halen albums. Everybody used them because that was the norm at the time. And then the company went bankrupt, and then you'll see on YouTube that there's people with 19-inch rec modules of that. Emulators, they're sound emulators now. You hook up and then you put the keyboards and MIDI 2 controllers, and you can be able to run it, and it does the sound through the transducers of the keyboard. So I've always wondered why they haven't never come out with a reproduction of the Obium keyboard. And also those Obiums had issues with tracking when you hit the buttons. Because Eddie talked about this in one of the magazines years ago. He's like, the keyboard, I'm having problems with the keyboard when I was recording stuff because, it had delays when you hit it, and we're like a half a second delay. This is all analog systems. These are all analog back in the day, not digital like they are now. So he used to have problems. And also they used to have problems with the boards. If you see the boards up there with all those switches, like Steve Ripley talks about, all these old analog systems have static control, static cleaners. You have to go in and you spray them all the time, like a tuner cards and stuff like that for the old TVs. So they had problems with those because they're analog pitchnometers, not digital. So now they're coming out with a digital version, and I think it would be cool because we grew up in a world where everything was like, early 80s and stuff. All the Rush albums, Van Halen albums, and it's you can mimic those sound digitally, but you still want that analog sound. It's just like an analog amp. The PD5150, that's an analog true amp. Analog circuitries, all analog choke tubes, all your live tubes, all your circuitries and everything. So when you go to the 5153 Fender makes, it's partial, it's a hybrid. It's tubes are analog because they're filament based, but you have digital circuitries inside the clean and the distortion channels because you have to, because the heat ranges that you're running into. You're running into a lot of heat problems on certain things. Plus, you want to have digital circuitries like Howard Kaplan will talk about this in long details later. He'll talk about you don't run a Variac on a new Fender amp. You can run one on a PV because it's all analog circuitries. But it's still not a good idea to put a Variac on an amp. Please be careful when you guys do this because I've been doing them since I was a kid back in the 83, 84. I read the books like you guys. I read all the books like Eddie was using a Variac. My brother was a phenomenal guitar player before I was, and he knew all this stuff. And he's like, you don't do this, David. You got to do it this way. And he's already learned it himself, And I was like, well, I want to try it. So I had a Marshall, and I would put I'd blow the fuses, you know. I don't know if you guys blow the fuses. I used to blow the fuses like crazy. Go to Radio Shack, buy a 5-pack of fuses, put the other fuse in it, blow it a couple hours later, whatever. You'd be playing around with voltages. Here's what I did, and I started experimenting over the years. I bring my voltage down to about I did this. I didn't bring it up. I brought it way down. So what I used to do is I would have a tube amp in front of me, and I would have a tube amp here, and I would have a cabinet here, and then I would have a Variac in the middle. So I would have the cranked way up. I'm talking about 130. I used to record like 130, 140 decibels in these cabinets, in these isolation booths. Because what you want is you want to crank the voltage down because what you're doing, you're choking the tubes down, not impeding the tubes up. You want to go down with them. So what you want to do is do tube saturation. So what you want to do is turn it down to like about 70 volts, and it chokes the tube's voltages down, and it almost creates like a sound envelope, so that whenever you break across the strings, it gives you that huge crunch sound at lower volumes. So that when you want to go up in volume, you have to crank the voltage back up to a point. See, there's a medium between voltage and volume, like Ohm's law states. So you have to be in a medium. You can't just choke it down to 70 volts and crank the amp up because it doesn't have enough pressure. It's like water pressure. You have a huge hose pipe with no water coming through it. Or when you put it up and turn the water pressure up, it shoots out. So think of that way. Think of water pressure as like amperage and voltage. So what happens is when you crank the voltage down on the variac, if you guys already probably done this before, but I learned this years and years ago when I was a kid, and you crank the voltage down, but the volume is up, you're losing the potential voltage between the signal between the head going to the speaker, because the speaker has to send the analog signal back through. So you're choking the speaker, and it will rattle and it won't sound right. So if you're going to do it true, you have to have a medium between them. So when everybody says, hey, I put a variac on my amp, okay, but what volume are you doing? You see what I mean? It all comes down to volume. And so here's another thing that I'll talk about later in another interview sometime, or another one of these things we do. I'm building an isolation guitar cabinet, and I talked to you guys about this before, and I'll have to show, it's out in Nashville. I'm building it right now. Okay, so let me show you how it works. It's a piece of 3x8 plywood on the bottom. It's got wheels on it. Above that, it's got springs, and the springs go onto the bottom of the cabinet because it's isolated. You got springs on the bottom with wheels, and then the cabinet sits here and it's isolated. Inside of that is a 2x12 EVH cabinet on another set of springs. So it's isolated between the springs, the wheels, cabinet, and then the springs on top of that. And then here's the EVH cabinet. So the EVH cabinet, you got a speaker here and a speaker here, right and left. I've got 6 inches of foam all the way around it on the outside, and I got baffles, wood baffles that move up and down off of servo motors. So what I'm doing is I've got a servo motor in the middle, so that separates. So you got a speaker here and a speaker here. It's a 2x12 cabinet. You remember the 12-inch speakers. Yep. So the baffle moves back and forth between the signal of both speakers. So I can blend live. So on top of that, I have a rod that goes across there, and I have a Shure 57 on this side and a Sennheiser 906 over here on that side. So then on top of that, I got a webcam on each side, and I got LED lights, and I'm using Arduinos to program this. So what I'm doing is the cabinet's sealed 60 feet away from me, and I've got my computer here in front of me. And what I'm doing is I'm moving the microphone's XYZ coordinates. So that means the microphone can be going down, sideways. So, you know, most times you want a speaker, a Shure 57 off to the side about 22 degrees off, you know, off the cone center.
Yep.
Somewhere in that area. I'll have to read my lab notes, but it's like 27 to 32 degrees off center. You don't ever want a speaker on top of it because you're not getting the overall ambience resistance, or not resistance, but the sound coming from it, the cone. You always want to be off center to a point. Okay, so what I want to do is this. So say that I'm recording, like what I want. I was thinking about this years ago when we was doing these shows. It's like, you know how everybody's having a hard time getting the sound that they want on one of these shows, because you got a microphone and you got a guitar cabinet behind you. You can't control it. So you want to be like in a studio. You want the cabinet way off in the distance, but you're pulling the input feeds off your mixer into your computer. So then I have a computer in front of me, and I'm going to do this in a few months, guys. Trust me. I'm going to have a live video, and I'm going to sit there with a guitar in front of me, and I'm going to be playing it, and I'm going to show you the live cabinet and the baffles moving up inside. And I'll say, well, how do you like this sound? How do you like this sound? How do you like this sound? So here's where it comes into play. Say that you're in a studio or you're playing in a live venue, and you want to crank up and you want to control the sound of your amp or the sound on stage. You know how when you play live, you have to blend everything in through a mixer, the house mixer. So if my cabinet's off to the side 25 feet away from stage, and I have two monitors in front of me, and like what Eddie does, he has all those cabinets behind him, but there's some monitors. They're turned on, and maybe two speaker cabinets or 3 speaker cabinets at the bottom are running. They're live, so he can hear them. He can hear the changes between Al and then the singer. You know, a lot of times, most of the times he'll listen to the drummer, his brother, for the changes, because his timing, he's wanting to make sure his timing's right on the song, because he's not hearing bass really, unless he wants to blend bass in, you know. Okay, so long story short, you want a cabinet behind you that's giving you monitor feedback, not potential all that volume in front of you. You want to isolate the guitar sound. So what I've been doing for the last few months is since November of last year, I've been trying to build this prototype isolation cabinet, and it's about 6 foot long and 4 foot wide. It's for a 2x12 cabinet. I'm building the first one, and then I'm gonna build a 4x12 next, because there are 2 of the EVH EL34 cabinets at home, the new ones.
Yep.
And I've got the EL34. I'm using the EL34s because I want to try the speakers differences between a regular standard EVH cabinet, because the EL34s have different speakers in them than the regular cabinets. But the heads are all, I got EL34 heads and the 6L6 heads and all that stuff. But I'm just saying, what you want to do is, I have all these 100-watt heads at home and stuff, and 50-watt heads, but they're so powerful. You can't. So also, the audio simulation systems that we use work really well, but you can't get tube saturation out of them. Still to this day, you can't. It's a mathematical formula, so you have to create and code in a digital format to make tube saturation work. And it's a lot of mathematical stuff. It's like working with physics. It's trying to get a B-2 bomber to fly in a way. So if you want tube saturation, what I'm saying is the more, like what I talked about earlier, more volume, and you have to have an equal between your voltages and volume, because it has to meet. If you choke it down too much, the speaker will not produce anything. It says a buzzing sound. So you'll hear people like, well, I got this amp that I can't get the right sound out of. And it's like, well, there's variables in it. So if you have a huge hose pipe with barely any water coming out, you're choking it down. So if you have a little tiny hose pipe with tons of volume through it, it's going to shoot a mile away, you see? So the same thing for tubes and how speakers work. Not to get too complicated. We'll talk about this later, but that's how, when you're in a studio, you want to have everybody records with isolation cabinets. Okay. Off stage, AC/DC's been doing this since the 80s. The cabinets behind them are dummies, except for maybe 2 to 3 cabinets behind them. So listening to the monitor changes between the drummer and either the singer, the drummer, or whoever controls the changes, mostly the drummer. So then Angus or Malcolm is hearing the drummer, and he wants to hear Angus's, like, say if you're Malcolm and you wanted to hear Angus's guitar tone when he cranks up and starts a riff, you want to hear the drummer and Angus. But you don't want the full potential of what you're hearing out in the audience. You can't take that. You've got to have, and that's why under the stage they have isolation cabinets. They're called ISO cabs, and they're boxes, big huge boxes, and they put the speakers they put them on springs and insulate the living heck out of them. And what happens is they mic them, and then that's what you're hearing, because they can control it. It's like controlling a jet engine. You cannot have a jet engine 125 miles and 125 decibels all the time. You got to control it. You see what I mean? So another thing I've been working on for the last 2 years, and I went to NAMM show yesterday or last 3 days. I was actually talking to people about sound reinforcement dampening. Okay, like materials, like what's plywood versus acrylic versus 3 inches of plywood versus 1 inch plywood meshed together with an air gap of 1 inch between them. You see what I mean? I've been all these different study researches. So what I've been finding is 1 inch plywood with the air gap of 1 inch, and then another piece of 1 inch plywood, and then on top of that you would have like a 3 inch piece of foam that goes in between it, and then you would have another blocker, because air is the best insulator in sound waves. Anything air resistance, because you can have a physical material, hard material, and then air gap, and then physical material, hard, and then a foam piece. Then it will break down the sound waves. So if you have 6 inches of air gap and distance between the materials, you can bring 140 decibels down to about 40.
Wow.
That's a lot. But I'm saying, because if say that you're in your house and it's 3 a.m. in the morning and you want to play your guitar cranked up. I mean, you want to sound just like what you're playing live. You got to have a cabinet, but you have your headphones on it, because so let me go back. You have a mixer over here in front of you, and you got your computer, but you got the cabinet 20, 30 feet away, and it's on springs with isolation springs, and nobody's going to hear it. But it's cranked way up, and you got your amp next to you with fans on it, because you're going to have ventilation on your fans, your cabinets, on your amps. But then when you crank through it, you actually hear the blend controls fully. And that's what I'll talk about amps. I don't mean to get off topic of amps tonight, but that's what I've been working on also.
Yeah. So David, you messed up some old Marshalls when you were younger with all the exploding tape stuff?
I used to mess up. My brother had a plexi head, an old plexi head from like 68 or 69.
Oh, wow.
And I used to play his all the time, too. And then he never wanted me to touch it because, he knew a lot more electronics than I did at the time. I mean, he was a genius at electronic systems and stuff. And I learned a lot just between, I would read articles about Eddie, and you like in 82 and 83, and Eddie said, I built when I was with my friends years ago, they said in 82, Eddie built his own guitars. And it's like, why would he build his own guitars? We were young. So we didn't know why he built his own guitars. It's like, well, why can't you go to the music store and get his stuff? And see, you realize later what he's trying to do. He's building a whole new trend because nothing out there fits what he needs. Okay. So he's building all this stuff, and he's talking about amps and stuff. So he had the old plexi heads. So, and then everybody wanted the old plexi stuff, like the old AC/DC albums and stuff. They had the old stuff from the 60s and 70s and the Marshalls that like Hendrix played through and all that stuff. And then you hear about Eddie playing the old plexis and stuff. And then I will tell you, I got one of the very first PV 5150s ever made. I got
really?
serial number 3, I think, or
oh, wow.
4, something, because I was helping on some projects at the time. I cannot talk about this really, but I was working on projects at the time and doing circuitries for analog circuitries, and I was able to make things for people, subcontracted. So I got things sent to me, and I was able to tweak them and stuff, and then they're really cool. No signatures on some of the heads because these were the original first ones. Cool stuff out of Meridian, Mississippi. It was cool stuff. But and then I get to talk to Howard a lot. He's a really great, cool guy. I get to talk to him on Facebook every now and he's a really cool guy. And he's a double E. He's an electrical engineer at Fender. He's the only one at Fender is an electrical engineer. So he's a genius at what he's doing. And I like talking to him when I can because it's really neat to talk to somebody over things that he's designing and get to ask him how he did the circuitry designs, or hey, why did you use a capacitor in this circuit versus a polarity circuit or something, this type of deal. Okay, it's like you see these guys building these pedal boards now and pedals. They use all these different circuitries and stuff. Now everybody wants to try to use tubes in pedals now. You remember a few years ago, everybody wanted to put tubes in the pedals. Then now they're going back to solid state again. They're always finding new things. But it's really interesting from the aspect of building your own circuitries because, see, I believe in a Tom Schultz mechanism. Tom Schultz is one of my other heroes. Tom recorded the first Boston album, and he found out that he couldn't get his guitar sound the way he wanted. So he went back to MIT and got people to help him build the effects pedals. That's where Rockman come from. You remember? I still got 3 of the Rockmans. The Rockmans are cool. Stereo chorus with a delay and its distortion. It's incredible what he did with solid state circuitries. And it's amazing. So I don't know if there's any other questions also.
Oh no, it's getting real late now.
Oh yeah,
the last question I had for you, David, what did you try one of the 59 Marshall reissues?
Yeah, they're pretty good. I don't own one. I want to buy one. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw Marshall there today, this week at the NAMM show. They just had the displays and they had some new stuff, but you couldn't really crank up, playing it. But I I have two of the 87 models. You remember the 87 reproductions that they sent out? I've got two of those at home in cases. I don't use them as much as I used to. I still got a whole bunch of the old 5150 heads and cabinets, and they just sit there now because I don't use them. I've been using a lot of the Fender stuff. I'll tell you what I've been playing with. And this is what I've been playing with for the last 2 years. I'm using a Rivera ISO cab. It's a 1x12 speaker in it. It's got I took the original JBL out. I put a 5150 Celestion, you know, the new one comes in the cabinet. So I put that in, and I'm running two of the 15-watt heads, the original version and then the new version. And Joe Suma gave me a good deal on one of the 5150 lunchbox heads, the new one. Yeah. So I'm using a lunchbox on the bottom and both of them. I've been playing around with voltages and all that stuff. I kind of tweak them with variacs and stuff like that. And then I'm using an ISO cab. So when I'm recording, I'll put my headphones on and I have a computer in front of me and I will sit there and listen to it. And I use a spectrum analyzer. I don't know if many of you guys use those. I use those for frequency dependencies on sound. I'm looking at sound waves through a cabinet. Do what the voltage versus the tone versus the output voltage going to the cabinet. And I have an oscilloscope here and a spectrum analyzer here, and I'm actually filtering both between them.
Right.
Yeah. But not to, I mean, that's really high elaborate details I could tell you later, but I mean, there's things that I tweak with all the time, from like doing almost like data science. You know, you give me something in front of me and I'll tweak it here, and then I can't just say it sounds good to me. I have to put documentation behind it. It's like, here's the voltages, here's the volume, here's what I'm presenting to everyone, that here's what it meets to, like specifications, like an engine. You get a race engine and you put a race engine in a car. You can't just say it goes fast. You got to tell what the RPMs are versus torque versus speed ratio differentials and weight, you know, stuff like that. You know?
Anyway. Yeah, but so just so you know, David, Johnny messaged me on Facebook. He's got a crash now.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so we'll get you on here again once that CNC machine is going to be awesome once that's up and running.
Yes, it's about another month away, and it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be really. I want to put a webcam on it. So here's the suggestion I want to ask you guys: would you like to see on one of these machines when it runs live? Do you want to see a view? Okay, the body's 4 foot away. You want to see a camera of the body off to the distance, or do you want to see the cam on top of it moving around, or do you want to see both? So I'm going to put cameras on it. I'm going to put one above it so you can see the tool movement above it, and then another camera back about 4 foot that you can see the project, because it has to do multiple passes. They can't just do one cut at a time. It has to do multiple cuts. That's how the CNCs work on these. Yeah,
I'd imagine you do both.
That's what I was thinking, and I'll probably do the 4 foot first, and then I'm going to show cameras, because most times it takes about 45 minutes usually to cut a body. You know, or 35 minutes or so. It depends on your tool paths and how you're doing your tooling and stuff. But I want to take it slow. I'm not going to do many bodies. The bodies I'm going to be I'll tell you, I'm going to build me a Kramer Ripley body, because I want to recreate the Ripley body. I'm redoing the circuitries on them right now, and that's, God, I need some help on that one, because that's going to take, because the circuit boards. We'll have to talk about this in a whole different subject, because the circuit boards are analog versus digital now. So we'll talk about that in another time. I'll pull out a Ripley, and you know, Steve, did you get yours fixed?
Yeah.
No. And as you had one, is yours fixed now, Johnny?
No. Okay. I'm thinking the high E string, the Bartolini. I'm thinking it's broken.
There's hex. There's 6 of them in there, and there's there are poles in each one of them. There's 6 of them in that Bartolini. So you have to take that Bartolini out. But I'll tell you what you need to do. You got to reach out to Steve Ripley and tell him what's going on with it, and he may just exchange it out for you for another Bartolini. And it's the Bartolini pickup. We need to do a show on this one day, and I'll flip it upside down, and I'll show you how the circuit boards come apart. It's like a plug and play. You pull it apart, and then you pull the whole pickup out. I'll show you that because I've got them all tore. I got one tore down. I'm cloning it is what I'm doing. So it's clone. It's fun. But those things are intriguing to me. And we'll have to talk about a Darkfire. You know, the Gibson Darkfire guitars? Those were cool. I got two of those, or one or two of those at home. I think two of them. That had, and we got to talk about this. You talked about the Trans Tremolo was cool. This thing has robotic tuners on it, so that what you do is you're playing live, you pull the knob and you turn it to like F sharp and you hit it down and it will tune it to F sharp live in front of you. Cool. It's really neat. It's ahead of its time. It's 20 years ahead of its time that Gibson built. And it's amazing.
Wow.
Dang.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I gotta go because I gotta wake up in the morning and go hiking. So
okay.
But hey, maybe if you want to continue this tomorrow night, maybe.
Yeah, I'm going to be at Makerspace tomorrow afternoon, and then I gotta get some sleep too because man, I'm running late now. So what we'll do is I'll come over tomorrow afternoon around 4 or 5 o'clock Central Standard Time, somewhere in that area, and then what I'll do is I will have some of the stuff. I'll show you the CNC machines, the Bridgeport machines. I'll show you the stuff that I'm working with now for creations of certain things that we haven't got yet, because everybody is wanting the most exclusive 5150 Frankenstrat in the world. You know how it is. You know, everybody wants this, and then we got to find the parts for that. You know, like there's certain parts that I've been looking for that string retainer for like 4 years, and then Chris Hubbard posted it on there a couple months ago, and I was eating breakfast one morning. It's like, oh man, he was talking about making one. It's like, well, I couldn't get to it, so let Chris do it. So I hope Chris gets it finished. It'll be cool to have that string retainer for the 5150. That's going to be neat.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you. Great talking to you guys.
Awesome.
Okay.
And thank you everybody that's with us in the chat. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Awesome.
All right, David Allen, rock on, Steve.
Thanks, man.
See you guys, and don't hang up just yet. But
yep.
See you guys later. JohnnyBeane.com. Good night.
Okay.